Doooovid here. We are live, starting a little bit early. I'd put it for 6 o'clock. So welcome to Ask the Rabbi. Doooovid here, number 13. So I'm working with two computers now. I got my new MacBook. So see, there's two of me. But fix this up here. So sorry to make a bracha to Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol na'eh b'dvorei. Okay, so I hadn't streamed for a while. I'd wanted to do these Ask the Rabbis on the Goy Jew Gentile distinction. I have a lot of information. Let's do a quick screen share. I've shared this before, so you can see. These are some of stuff, like multiple truth hypothesis, chess. I have a whole bunch of stuff to do more streams, possibly one on slavery, the history of slavery, Jewish role in slavery, biblical slavery, Talmudic slavery, one on the history of the Jewish Gentile distinction, also on the origin of Noahide laws, and on the origins of Tikkun Olam. And there's a lot to that, so I've been putting it off. And so, and also on the Judeo concept of the soul. So I've done the research. Well, it's pretty complicated, and there's really a lot more to it. And I keep on wanting to do more research, so I haven't gotten to it. And so I figured I'd pop out a stream on Jewish music. So I've been doing regular week in review, and with the encouragement of Jennifer, Church of Entropy, just to mention, I did sign up for the Science of Consciousness conference. So, and I bought Jennifer a ticket. So it turned out that two tickets included one ticket, $300 included two. So University of Michigan, the Consciousness Center is one of the co-sponsors. It's a in real life event in Arizona, and it'll be all next week during Passover. So Chol Hamoed, Monday through Friday. Me and Jennifer will be attending the top scientists, thinkers around the world, talking about the science of consciousness with Professor Hamarov and Roger Penrose and a whole bunch of other people. You could see the schedule of speakers, basically all day, every day, all week, next week. It actually looked like it included Michael Cremo from ISKCON, who I'd driven around when he came to Metro Detroit, actually spoke at University of Michigan, one of the sponsors. So I'm not going to talk about this today, but likely Monday night, or even possibly 2 or 3 times next week, me and Jennifer will do a post stream, even though the conference is all day, going till late at night. And there's some of the biggest names in consciousness. Deepak Chopra is doing so. Just mentioned that I did sign up for that, and I was able to get Jennifer a ticket also. So there will be no week in review this Sunday night, because of Passover, and then hopefully Monday or Tuesday we'll start doing a post coverage stream of the Science of Consciousness conference. So I decided to do an Ask the Rabbi today, and also Ask Me Anything. So if anyone's in the chat has something want to ask Doooovid here, I guess try hopefully semi-related to the topic, or see what I could do. Certainly if you want to make a donation, I accept donations, but feel free to ask me. So you got someone asking wants to play chess. So I haven't done chess streams in a while. I'm actually linked on my YouTube page. You could see on my YouTube page, I'm actually linked. Just so when you go to Doooovid, my YouTube page, you could see the link to my chess.com and my Lee Chess accounts. So if you want to find me for a game of chess, the links are right there on my YouTube page. But I'm not going to be talking about chess today. As I showed, I have preparation for chess. So I wanted to talk about music, and specifically the meaning of Jewish music, the Kabalistic Hasidic approach to. I wanted to talk music called Nagunim. So atheist Pandit. Good to see you. I haven't spoken with Uzma Jaidevi since that last time. So if you did want to, stream like you mentioned, reach out. So today I'm going to be talking about the nature of Jewish music. So I wrote this article at the encouragement of Church of Entropy Week in Review. I'm going to try to write an article every week. Hopefully this week I'll also be able to get one done. If not, because of Passover, the next week I'm thinking the next one would be on chunking theory, possibly on chess, the role of chess in decision-making, candidate moves, and analysis trees. Mr. IC3, welcome. Glad to see you. Saw you in the Claire stream. So here was this article I wrote on the hero's journey in music and chanting. And let me just read it briefly. For the last few years on Week in Review of Church of Entropy, I've opened the program with a chant, usually Hebrew or Sanskrit, but more recently analyzing popular music. Along with the chant, I've given the translation, meaning, histories, and use of the chant in prayer services. Starting Week in Review of a Chant has helped with the show's focus on consciousness, science, and spirituality. With the encouragement of Church of Entropy, I've decided to turn some of my thoughts into a series of articles on the deeper meaning of music, congregational chanting, and music's relationship to consciousness, specifically focusing on the relationship of music to the monomyth, the hero's journey. And also, I'm planning on reaching out to John David Ebert, who worked for the Joseph Campbell Foundation and wrote for Joseph Campbell, who I've had on my channel before, and hopefully I'll have him on to talk about Joseph Campbell and the monomyth, although I haven't reached out. For those familiar with Jewish music, the majority of Hebrew synagogue music has a four-part structure meant to align with the four-letter name of God, the Tetragrammaton, which musically means a four-part structure, ABCB, with the second part repeating, serving to not only add pleasant musical accompaniment to the prayers, but also facilitate a meditation on the divine name, a spiritual journey, understood to be the starting in the material realm in part A, connecting to the heavenly realm in part B, and then entering the heavenly realm in part C, and returning to the connected material and heavenly realms by repeating part B. In a similar way, I've noted the structure of many Hare Krishna temple tunes. There are three parts, A, B, C, very similar to the Hebrew chants. Having a mostly Western audience unfamiliar with Judaism, in order to express this concept, I've found explanatory power in The Hero's Journey as laid out by Joseph Campbell, 1949. Campbell's monomyth has a general structure of departure, initiation, and return as a framework for the narrative of all heroes, myths, and legends. Similarly, majority of music has a simple three-part structure that mirrors the hero's journey, utilizing techniques referred to in music theory as theme and variation, and dissonance and resolution. I found the hero's journey extremely useful to help explain the meaning behind music, and has allowed me to even analyze the direction of popular music, including the degeneration of Western culture from the hero's journey to the loser's journey, and the general love song to the lust song. In this essay, I will explain the connection of the hero's journey to the musical structure and a deeper analysis to the meaning of music, and hope in the future to continue with a series of essays and YouTube videos analyzing various songs and eras of music to see how the hero's journey although always in the same structure, has changed over time, mirroring larger changes in society. But first, a further spiritual note on Hasidic philosophy important to the interpretation and meaning of music. The Baal Shem Tov taught a process of self-improvement similar to the hero's journey, consisting of submission, separation, and sweetening. As I read first in Rabbi Yitzchak Ginberg's Turning Darkness into Light, the Kabbalah of Psychology, 2002. This Hasidic teaching follows the basic laws of repentance as laid out by the early sages, consisting of recognition of sinful behavior, regret and amends for the sin, and refraining from committing the sin in the future in similar situations. However, the Kabbalistic interpretations of repentance is more intricate, as Kabbalah proposes, in addition to making amends and rectification of society through the three-part process of submission, recognition of sinful behavior, separation, avoiding the association and situations that elicit sinful behavior till personal transformation, and sweetening post-personal transformation, being able to re-enter the previous situation in society at large without sinning, and transforming, rectifying the world, repairing the world. For Hasidim, music is a tool to help people transform ourselves and take part in the self-improvement process. Due to Week in Review's audience being largely unfamiliar with Jewish theology, I expressed this concept in more general terms of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, which in reality is almost the exact same as the Kabbalistic concept. Campbell's hero's journey has 17 parts divided into three main sections: departure, initiation, and return. And you could see in the article the full division of the 17 parts. And hopefully I'll talk about that more. Um, for the sake of musical interpretation, only the three main parts of departure, initiation, return are important. And detail of the intermediate steps are somewhat fluid and laid out with some variation among scholars, usually in circular form, showing a repetitive process in the hero's journey. But the main key to the hero's journey is the hero starts in society facing all the challenges that the rest of humanity faces, then is separated from society and given some sort of special knowledge or ability, allowing the hero to eventually triumphantly return to and transform society. Hence, the hero is a hero because the hero changes and transforms the struggles most of humanity succumbs to, but first must be transformed into a hero through the journey consisting of the first two steps of departure and initiation in order to help deliver humanity from the common challenges facing us. The hero's journey provides a structure and generic process, hypothesizing that all myth can be understood to take this form, hence the monomyth. All stories develop characters, and the narrative arc will follow some form of the structure of the hero's journey. Back to the musical structure and how the hero's journey fits into the narrative arc of music. Without getting too much into musical theory, which I hope to develop over a series of more in-depth articles and videos with examples, musical compositions also have generic structures that all music can be broken down into. The simplest form of music is one melody repeated. Many simple songs, chants, synagogue music take this simplest form with one melody repeated throughout all the song's verses. The next simplest form is the minuet that has two parts, A, B, usually with B being a variation of A with simple changes, usually a higher key. The A-B form is especially popular for congregational chanting and in popular music with lyrical verse and chorus where the B part is the repetitive chorus. Society's most popular songs have this verse and chorus structure, some simple A-B, but most have a three-part ABC structure, building up in two parts to the chorus, utilizing two main musical techniques of theme and variation and consonance, dissonance, and resolution. So the A part introduces a theme that represents the intro of the hero, normalized as potentially any one of us and the normative struggles we all face. The B part of the variation on the theme introduces musically dissonance on the A part to represent the departure and initiation, the struggle needed to turn someone ordinary into a hero. And the C, the chorus, is the return and resolution where the hero reemerges triumphant, usually the chorus. Musically, this is done through techniques of melody, rhythm, harmony, tone, time signatures, and more, as the hero's theme is introduced in A, and in B is slightly changed, usually in a way that increases dissonance, and then the dissonance is resolved in part C, usually at a higher key. In congregational chanting, the congregation is literally taken on this journey, as most people untrained in singing have a hard time hitting the high notes, but together with the congregation, get carried along with the congregation, will sing together the high part in part C, hence being taken along for the journey by the power of congregational chanting, collectively resolving each other's dissonance and prevailing over collective struggles together. Here I've laid out the framework of my theory of the hero's journey in music, taking from the Kabbalist general music theory and using the language of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Just like the monomyth can be used to understand all narratives, the three-part structure of the hero's journey, departure, initiation, and return can also be used to understand all songs. Much Hasidic music has no words and is purely a meditation Sorry, I hope I'm still live. Unfortunately, my internet went out. So to connect, I apologize. There's severe storms here in Metro Detroit and wind, and my power flickered. And it took like a full few minutes for my power to come back on. So sorry about that. Let me see how far I got. And B is late. Okay, so I greatly apologize about that. Sorry, my power went out, flickered out, and it caused my internet to restart, which took a good few minutes to fix. So my article was there in the chat. Greatly apologize about that. I won't finish. Hopefully people were able to read it. But this was the precipice for this stream here, that the article I wrote on the hero's journey in music. So sorry about that. Hopefully people were active in the chat and say, yes, God forbid it, so the power went out and had to wait for the power to come back in. So as I was showing there, I mentioned for my stream on, sorry, I hope my internet's not weak, the Hasidic understanding of music. And anyone who watches Week in Review, I've been doing all sorts of interpretation of music, and I've been going into interpretation of modern music, mostly classic rock, modern rock, pop, various things. I even wrote some of my own rap songs and various songs that I've shared. But today I want to talk straight about the Hasidic Jewish understanding of music. So, based on this essay that I read and posted in the chat. Greatly sorry about the interruption there. Sorry, it was a few minutes there, and it was just my internet went out. I hope that doesn't happen again. There's a severe wind in Metro Detroit, and it caused the internet to flicker. I could technically power my internet from my phone, but I wasn't expecting a power outage. Okay, so let's start looking at an understanding of Jewish music. And I lived in Jerusalem. You could see my YouTube channel here, and Doooovid, and the playlists. I studied in Jerusalem under prominent rabbis, Hasidic rabbis. I studied in Hasidic yeshivas. I was in Brooklyn and in Israel, and the Karlin Stolen, Toldos Avram Yitzchak, Bubov, Sklen. I have a playlist of Hasidic tunes here, and now I live in Metro Detroit. Hasidus is very weak, and so I'm more in between the non-Jews, and the Hasidic part of my life is still my basic understanding of philosophy, but the practice of regular chanting is much less. So let me jump straight in, trying to understand some of the basic understanding of Hasidic music. So first, a quick story, kind of the role of music and joy in Hasidus. So here's just a quick article from Chabad, famous story about Reb Zusha and Reb Malik. The two brothers, famed Reb Elimelech of Lajinsk and Reb Zusha of Anipol, often wandered about together, posing as simple beggars. They would mingle with the masses, listening, teaching, speaking, helping, and guiding whoever and whatever they could. They would have been in the late 1700s, before the founding of America, like 250 years ago, the story, in Eastern Europe. Once, while they were traveling with a group of vagabonds, members of the group were accused of being thieves, resulting in the entire bunch being thrown in jail. Confident of their innocence and eventual release, the two brothers sat quietly as the afternoon progressed. Reb Elimelech stood up to prepare himself to pray the afternoon service. "What are you doing?" his brother asked. "I'm getting ready for mincha," replied Rabbi Elimelech. "Dear brother," said Reb Zusha, "it is forbidden to pray in the cell because there is a pail that serves as a toilet nearby, making the room unfit for prayer. Dejected, the holy Rebbe Elimelech sat down. Soon after, Rebbe Elimelech began to cry. "Why are you crying?" said Reb Zusha. "Is it because you are unable to pray?" Rebbe Elimelech affirmed. "But why weep?" continued Reb Zusha. "Don't you know that the same God who commanded you to pray also commanded you not to pray when the room is unfit for prayer? By not praying in this room, you have achieved the connection to God. True, it is not the connection that you had sought, yet if you truly want the divine connection, you would be happy God has afforded you the opportunity to obey his law at this time, no matter what it is." "You are right, my brother." Suddenly smiling, the feelings of dejection vanished from his heart and mind. Rabbi Elimelech took his brother's arm and began to dance from joy as a result of performing the mitzvah of not praying in an inappropriate place. The guards heard the commotion and came running. Witnessing the two brothers dancing with their long beards and flowing tzitzis, the guard asked the other prisoners what had happened. "We have no idea." The two Jews, discussing the pail in the corner, all of a sudden they came to such a happy conclusion and began to dance. "Is that right?" sneered the guards. They're happy because the pail. So we'll show them. They promptly removed the pail from the cell, and then the brothers were able to pray mincha. This is a famous Hasidic story, kind of like of joy in music and in any situation, no matter what the situation. The right thing to do is to pray and chant to God. And in this case, there's a lot of stories like this. King David, acted like a crazy man, maybe would dance and chant, maybe similar to Lord Chaitanya. And many Hasidim, God forbid, there's stories during the Holocaust of people who were martyred and killed. The last thing they did was chant and pray to God and say, "Okay, this is my last moment. I'll be happy, and I'll express the happiness through chanting and praying to God." So just a famous Hasidic story. Here's a web page I found of a map that shows Eastern Europe and various Hasidic tunes or Jewish tunes connected to a map timeline. So you can see here the map of Europe, and then we click chants, and there's hundreds there. Maybe they'll keep on updating it. So it's just an interesting resource for people there. My internet isn't weak, so I apologize about that. The storms here in Michigan. Hope it doesn't ruin the stream. You got to be happy, and so I'll talk more about that. But just some interesting links for people to look at if you wanted to look at Eastern Europe or Europe and connecting various places to where tunes came and when they were first recorded. So in my essay, I had mentioned the concept of the three-part structure of repentance, of submission, separation, and sweetening that I'd read from Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg of Chabad in the Psychology of Kabbalah, From Darkness to Light. And it said, he quotes it from the Baal Shem Tov. It comes from Kesser Shem Tov 96. And so I'll read that here, just this quick understanding of the Hasidic understanding of this three-part journey, because the hero's journey that I expressed from Joseph Campbell in my article is very similar to the Hasidic concept here that comes from this book Kesser Shem Tov, which is a collection of stories and teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. This commentary on Psalm 144 verse 17: "Our oxen are heavily laden." When a person knows that the master of the world abides in all that is animated in the world, then one can endure all things. And therefore the verse continues, "There is no breach." And so did I hear later from my teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, that through the person's awareness that God's glory fills the land, and that each motion and each thought arises through God, may divinity be blessed, although in many instances the opposite of one's prayer may come to pass. Whereas I heard from him that one needs to apply the process of subduing, distinguishing, sweetening, for by means of the cosmic rupture the holy sparks fell into the klipot, and one needs to separate the evil and distracting thoughts from the divine presence. Following discourse on the mystical meaning of each letter and how they hold divine life force in different degrees, and the creatures' life energies are running and returning, and this is the liberation of the Shekhinah from captivity. The above-mentioned process is what constitutes the subduing, bringing about the state where it be as though it is not he who is speaking, but the Shekhinah, the divine presence. The distinguishing refers to the conscious removal of obscurations, and the sweetening is effected by raising them up so as to sweeten them in reconnection to their root manifestations of the true realm of understanding, and the words of the wise are gracious. So this is the teaching from the Baal Shem Tov. It's a little obscure written here. I'm going to go more into detail of that. But I just wanted to mention that from my essay for the origins of this Hasidic three-part process similar to the hero's journey that the music structure will represent. So I'll do a quick song. I'll sing one of the most famous Hasidic tunes ever. And this song comes from about 250 years ago. R Aharon Karliner, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. And he wrote these words for a Shabbos tune called Yah Echsof. But it's likely that the tune that is sung to it actually was for different words. In Karlin Stone, they sing it to Ola Kol, Yiskal, Yiskadash, the words from the Torah reading, from that are said before the Torah reading on Sabbath. So, for as I said, a minuet of the basic A-B structure, where you have a verse and chorus. You have part A, and then for the chorus, B repeats. For an A-B-C-B tune, which mirrors the tetragrammaton of God's name, and I'm going to get more into detail why this is so important. The chorus becomes the B part. So you'll have A, the first refrain, then the chorus as B, and then C will be the high part, and then it'll go back to the chorus. So most Shabbos songs that have multiple refrains will have this structure where the A, B, C, B structure that mirrors God's name, and that's because it's supposed to be a meditation on God's name. And I'm going to show more about this. Let me quickly show just this image here of like the four worlds, and we'll talk more about this. Anyone knows a little bit about Kabbalah, the Kabalistic journey, where you're going into the mystical realms, and as you can see, the divine name repeats. So you have the Yud Hey Vav Hey, which is the A B C B structure, and starting in the material realm, going into the lowest realm represents the material realm, going to the higher levels of the spiritual realm. And here you can see a bunch of graphical depictions of this process that would be represented musically, with the A, B, C, B structure relating to the God's divine name. That the music is meant to be a meditation on God's name, and it's meant to take a person on the journey, starting in the material realm to the divine realm and then back. And so that's the meaning behind Hasidic music, is this, like Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, but the connection of the material and spiritual realm, and a meditation on God's name. And I'm going to go much more into detail on this. So this is one of the most famous Hasidic tunes. I'm going to look at some tunes, old tunes. Say this tune's about 250 years old. It's commonly sung by most Hasidim, although not in Chabad. So I'm going to cover Chabad tunes, because Chabad is the most well-known Hasidus and all over the world. It has lots of famous nigunim in Hebrew. So take a little drink. Yama ma ma, yama ma ma yam, ay ya 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 ya. Oh yama ma ma, yama ma 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 ma. Oh ya ma 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 ma. Oh ya 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 ya, ma 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 ma. ay, 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 yama, mama, yama, mama, mama, ay, ay, yama, mama, ay, yama, mama, yama, mama, ya, na, 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 mama, mama. Ayam, manana, mayayam, ayayam, manana. Oh, Yah Echsof, noyam Shabbos hamasemes, yimeis chedes, oy, 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 Beskivos echo. Oy, yama, mama, ya, 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 ya. Ay, 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 ma, ma, na, na, ma, ya, ma, ya, ay, ay, ma, ma, ya, na, 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 ma, ya, ay, ay, ma, 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 na, na, ya. Yah Echsof, noyam Shabbos, ayayam, hamamam, hamisemes, risachedes, beskivos echo. So that's 250 years old. That's actually in the Ukraine. R Aharon Karliner is known to have made tens of thousands. They say 60,000 Bali Tshuva after the Khmelnytsky massacres and the rise of the Baal Shem Tov. Judaism had been somewhat in shambles, and the Baal Shem Tov rose up students, and Aharon Karliner was a contemporary colleague of the Balatanya Reb Shneur Zalman Ladi, the first Rebbe of Chabad, and they traveled often together. And Karlin was known to yell in the fields, that they would gather in the fields and they would yell the prayers. And so you could picture Hasidim hundreds of years ago in the Ukraine would gather together, and it's almost like this tune's pretty melodic, but a lot of their tunes are almost just like yelling. I have some of those on my YouTube channel. But just the feel of a Hasidic niggin. I'm not sure if people could have seen the 4-part structure of the refrain, the chorus, which would have been the B part. Ya ma 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 ya ya ya. Ya ma 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 ma. Yah Echsof, noyam Shabbos hamasemes, imisachedes, oy, 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 beskivos echo. So that would have been the B part, and so the first stanza here, and then the chorus, and then the high part, the C part, and going back to the B part for the chorus, and it's 4 stanzas, and it would repeat. So that's classic Hasidic niggin, possibly the single most famous, most popular, well-known Hasidic niggin. I'll go over some of the other ones, but just a feel for it. So keep on moving on here. Wesley, thanks for joining. So just Wikipedia here, just understanding of the history of Jewish music. So music is part of Judaism, in the Bible, there's mentioned instruments. In the temple, there was music. There was a collection of instruments in Passover after the splitting of the of the Sea of Reeds, and Miriam leads songs, and there's the Shir Yamsuf, and there's multiple times where you have song as an element, and then in the temple service, music was part of certain elements. So the actual animal sacrifices and the priestly service was done in absolute silence. So if anyone's read the Talmud and the laws of the priest who performed the blood rites within the temple, that was done in absolute silence. There was no music, no chanting, no wordless tunes like Hasidic tunes, but during the festivities there was tunes. And later we have prayers of words that were added after the destruction of the temple. So just reading here from Wikipedia. After the destruction of the temple and the subsequent diaspora of the Jewish people, there was a feeling of the great loss among people. At the time, a consensus developed that all music and singing would be banned. That was codified as a rule by some early rabbinic authorities. However, the ban on singing and music, although not formally lifted by any council, soon became understood as only a ban outside religious services. Within the synagogue, the custom of singing soon reemerged. In later years, the practice began to allow singing for feasts celebrating religious life cycle events such as weddings. And other time, the formal ban against singing and performing music lost its force altogether. There's periods during the Jewish calendar where there'll be no music at all, like from Passover till Shavuos, the 7-week period. Generally, there's no music. And also the 3 weeks in the summer is mourning. There's no music. Some rabbis never listen to music, period. Sometimes, like in Jerusalem, there's no instruments besides at some weddings, or if there's wedding, it's only drums besides for sukkah. And it's similar to my thoughts on laughter, where laughter is degenerate, but you're saying the temple's been destroyed, we're in exile, and we shouldn't be happy. We should recognize the seriousness of the situation, and therefore music is somewhat like forbidden according to a strict approach. I think even in Iran or some Muslim countries, they also have similar forbidding of music, for like music as a lack of seriousness, similar to laughter. But the music re-enters for like life cycle events like weddings, and to accompany parts of the prayer service. You also have the cantillation. For prayers, you have what after the destruction of the temple, in the formalization of the prayer service, you have what's called nusuk, which is a method of chanting the music. Nusuk, I think literally means melody. It's the same word in Arabic actually, and from Islam, and it just means the traditional melody that prayers are said to. That's musical, but not so to say song, but more just musical. And then also you have cantillation. So when you read the Bible, you have these cantillation marks, which are not really music, but they're an intonation which is of a musical form to add meaning and possibly melody or sweetness to the Torah reading. And here you can see the list of the various cantillation marks if anyone's ever read from the Torah. So just the classical Jewish music of how we understand the history of music. So ironically, the oldest known Jewish song goes back about 1,500 years, and it was recorded by a priest. I think it's pentatonic. Any Jew who's familiar with prayer services would probably know this tune. And a priest says that he was walking past synagogue and heard this tune, and he wrote it down in one of the earlier forms of music notation going back about 1,500 years. And most Jews would recognize this tune. It's still used on the high holidays or major holidays in most synagogues. I think it's pentatonic. Ay-ya-ya-yum, ay-ya-yum, 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 ay-yum, ay-ya-yum, Ayayamamam, ayayamamam. So that is, even in Reformed synagogues, modern Orthodox, Hasidic, that tune is still widely used today. It's probably European in origin. As said, it uses the pentatonic scale of how music was used in the ancient days, what type of tones, if it was different than the European codification, although almost all Hebrew music today, besides Sephardic music, Ashkenazic music, Hasidic music, is in the European form. But say that popular synagogue song is actually recorded going back 1,500 years. So let me keep on moving along, and I'll quote a little bit of scripture about music. So here is a verse in Samuel. No, saying the verse in Kings. Now then, get me a musician. And the music played. The hand of the Lord came upon him. And this expression here, keneged hamagid, is actually a Kabalistic term, and we'll talk more about this later. This which talks about the relationship between prophecy and music. So we see here, this is actually in the Passover Talmud, that the sages taught with regards to all the songs of praise that David recited in his book. Sorry. Sorry, I lost what I was looking to read here. But here you see the role of, in the Talmud, it talks about the role of music in song, and it talks about the role, here it is. So the Gemara, incidentally, this serves to teach you that the divine presence rests upon an individual, neither in an atmosphere of sadness, nor in an atmosphere of laziness, nor from the atmosphere of laughter, nor from the atmosphere of frivolity, nor from the atmosphere of idle conversation, nor from the atmosphere of idle chatter, but rather from an atmosphere imbued with joy of a mitzvah, as stated with regard to Elisha after he became angry at the king of Israel. His prophetic spirit left him until he requested, but now bring me a musician. And it came to pass when the musician played, the hands of the Lord came upon him. This source teaches that Elisha needed music to cheer him up in order to receive prophecy, similar to a statement that it was the practice of Rabbi before he began teaching law to the sages. He would often say humorous comment, and the sages would be cheered in order to bring joy to them. He made a joke, generally very serious people, in order to bring joy, that Torah in service of God is better done in joy, and the purpose of music is to create an atmosphere of joy, and that is why music is added to the prayer services. So that's from the Talmud and even the prophets. Here, is further commentary on this verse, Kings 2, King 3:15. And now get me a musician. The musician played. The hand of the Lord came upon him. And this keneged hamanagin is understood that he couldn't receive prophecy when he was sad. In order to have prophecy, he needed to be cheered, and music served the purpose of cheering him up. So from this statement, the Kabbalists later say that the Hakel, the hall of prophecy, is next to the hall of music, or there's a connection between the prophetic process and music. And also there's statements about that of repentance, that music is related to repentance, and we'll see that later. So just seeing the functional role that music will play in traditional Judaism, largely for prayers and for prophecy in general. So let me get to Chabad here. If anyone has a direct question at me, you could do an @Doooovid. I'll try to answer your relevant questions if anyone has. I'll try to keep this largely in spiritual. So here's from Chabad, just about the role of music in Chabad Hasidus. Here was my chanting with Doooovid on my YouTube page if you want to see traditional Hasidic chanting in Jerusalem. So, music, spirituality, and transformation. If words are the pen of the heart, taught Reb Shneir Zalman of Lady, then song is the pen of the soul. The soul's pen, however, writes in the opposite direction from the heart's. While words carry meaning downward from God's own primal consciousness into the minds of sages and the lips of prophets to inscribe them upon human hearts, song carries the soul upward to be absorbed within the infinite light. That is why Nigunim generally have no words. Words limit the divine, and the nigun tears the soul beyond all bounds, beyond words. A tzaddik, righteous person, is one who has mastered the animal inside and has achieved a higher state of being. In a nigun, the Jewish song, a tzaddik encodes his soul. When we sing a nigun of a tzaddik, we connect with the innermost garments of the tzaddik's soul, and from there come to union with the light of the tzaddik is found. That is why each note and nuance of the nigun must be precise, as the words of a sacred text. They must be learnt and repeated in perfect form, because the tzaddik's mind and soul are held within them. The parts of the nigun are called gates, entrances from one spiritual world to a higher one. Each demands not only new breath, but a new state of consciousness. The fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Shalom Dov Ber, taught each gate must be repeated twice. The first time forms traces a form, and the second time carves deep into the soul. So as I mentioned, Hasidic tunes are mostly A, B, C, B, but they would be repeated. So in form, it would be A, A, B, B, C, C, B, B. And so the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe said each gate must be repeated twice. The first time only traces a form. The second time carves deep into the soul. This is why nigun must never be rushed. The pace, the silence, the mindfulness, all must be preserved in order that the nigun reach deep inside. The Holy Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak of Lubavitch taught a nigun opens up the window in the soul. First, there must be a deep contemplation, focusing the mind upon the oneness of the cosmos and its creator, to see the unity within each thing until it becomes more real than even your sense of self. But the contemplation may remain frozen in the realm of cold intellect. With a nigun, what is held in prison deep in the soul pours down into the mind, and from the mind to the heart. Meditation may enlighten the intellect, but a nigun can uplift and transform all of your being. That is why the ancient prophets would sing and play musical instruments as they awaited the gift of prophecy. It is the way they would strip themselves of the barriers of body and mind, opening themselves as channels of the infinite light, not for the sake of transcendence alone, but to draw the transcendence down to earth, to awaken the hearts of humankind to the inner truths of life on earth. Song wrote the second Rebbe of Chabad, Reb Dov Ber, lies in the core of life. Its source is the most supernal ecstasy. A river went from Eden to the waters of the garden. From the source of all delight, the river of life flows downward, branching outward to each world and every created being. Everything thirsts to rejoin with its source above, and from the yearning comes its song. And with the song comes alive the heavens sing, the sun, the planets, and the moon. Each animal, each planet, each rock has its particular song according to how it receives life, until the entire cosmos pulsates with a symphony of countless angels and souls and animals and plants, and every drop of water and molecule of air singing the song that gives its life. This is why nigun brings a surge of new life and healing, sweetens the bitter soul, and fills the home with light, like the song sung by King David for King Saul, which healed his bitter spirit. The song is oneness. The song turns around upon itself in a circle of oneness until there is no beginning or end. As the Rebbe Nachman Mendel Schneerson taught, a song unites those who sing and hear it. When words are spoken, we each hear the words according to our understanding, but a song, we are united as a single pulse and a single melody. This is why it said, all the world will sing a new song in the Messianic era coming very soon upon us, a song of the essential oneness expressed throughout the world. So here also is an article I found from Rabbi Abraham Afula, one of the early Kabbalists, about the role of music in trying to achieve prophecy. So it kind of, as I mentioned, the connection between music and prophecy, and there's actually direct literature on that. So thanks for the super chat. Appreciate that. Barbara Spector, immigration. I personally like Barbara Spector, but it's not the topic at hand. As I mentioned to Claire yesterday, that Jews focus on action, not so much belief. Saying, why don't we try to get people to believe things? So I say we focus on action. And thanks for the love, Mr. Boston. And attempt to change the world for a better place and get people to create unity. I'm going to be talking about music and the role of in Hebrew what are called unifications. So Barbara Spector is expressing the essential Jewish character trying to unify the world, and although she's not doing it in a classical like Hasidic attempt, that it comes out as mass immigration, by just saying we should all be nice to each other, universal humanism, so to say, all people are equal. Immigration is more a political topic, but why Jews would push for that is an expression of the fundamental nature of Jewish repair the world. Although it's possible that it's actually not helping people, and that immigration as a policy is actually negative for large amounts of people. So appreciate the super chat, and people have questions. I'll try to answer even somewhat unrelated questions, but I want to focus on the music. Barbara Spector is one of the common things, or the Jewish role in immigration is definitely one of the largest topics I get asked about. There's nothing necessarily in the religion that means promoting immigration, but certainly if you poll Jews, immigration is one of the single largest issues that Jews care about, especially in America, probably worldwide, for a series of reasons. But let me get back to the music. So let's look at Chabad. So Chabad is all over the world, and it's canonized, and so just OI asking if the planets are actual gods. No, the planets might have effects, like a spiritual effects, like if you mean lowercase gods, lowercase g gods, not like idols, but just like lowercase, like Elohim, of forces that have some sort of spiritual force that affects our life, but like not like idols in the sense God, like we're monotheists, there's only one God. And God forbid, like Christ. I don't want to get too much into the Jewish understanding of Jesus. It's disputed whether Jesus was a false prophet or a legend, or possibly Jesus was a righteous, misunderstood person, or the difference between the teachings of the church and Jesus. But I don't want to get too far off topic talking about Jesus. So Chabad has, we'll call it a cultish movement in the classical theological understanding of what a cult is, that a cult is centered around a man. And so Chabad has kind of like a royal bloodline and rabbis, and the rabbis, 7 generations, and the last rabbi that wasn't replaced by a new Rebbe. So the movement, kind of like Breslov, is now leaderless. But the movement, the first Rebbe traced his lineage to King David, and the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe was a descendant of King David. Possibly a lot of people believe a potential messianic figure. And as Moshe Wolfson said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe did more for Judaism than anyone in the history of the world since the time of Moses, and even possibly more than Moses. And so the accomplishments of the Lubavitch Rebbe are almost unfathomable. And so you see that the Chabad Lubavitch is probably the single largest, maybe like the State of Israel, but Jewish organization, 4,000 rabbis, institutes around the world. The Lubavitch Rebbe would have been his 120th birthday. But Chabad is canonized, and there's songs. So if you go to any Chabad around the world, they have the exact same songs that they sing. Just like the general prayer service, that Judaism itself is canonized. And if you go to any synagogue around the world, you will hear the same tunes that, and these tunes come from hundreds of years and were built up, and the Rebbe's created songs. And you're say Zionist. I'm say neutral on Zionism. Zionism we'll call like a religious, a more political movement than a spiritual movement, although it has spiritual connotations, as like the return of Jews to Israel, or what's going to happen at the end of days. But Zionism is a political movement, so say I'm neutral on. So, and Chabad, the Rebbe's father-in-law was anti-Zionist. The Rebbe himself was more neutral on Zionism. And in a similar, even though the Rebbe possibly did more for the state of Israel than anyone in the history of Israel. And I don't want to talk too much about the glories of the Rebbe today. I want to talk about their songs. So you could see Chabad Nagunim. Let me read a little here just off of Wikipedia. Chabad Rebbe's told of two characteristic categories of followers: the Ovid, who seeks to practice divine service from their mystical inspiration, and the Maskil, whose first aim is a deeper understanding of Hasidic thought. The average person can combine both archetypes in their daily life. Some Chabad Nagunim are more suited to moments of inward contemplation, and others celebrate and inspire outward fulfillment. One renowned story both cautions against mixing the two necessary aspects and playfully recommends not to be overly concerned. So in Hasidic terminology, meditative Dveikus Nagunim correspond to lower tshuva, returning to God, like moving away from sin, and joyful Nagunim to higher tshuva, kind of like a serving God out of love. In Hasidic philosophy, such as explained in the third section of Tanya, tshuva does not only involve repentance and rectification of the previous spiritual faults. Rather, as the Baal Shem Tov taught, even perfectly righteous tzaddikim should return to God in the higher tshuva of continual ascent in holiness. According to the Kabalistic exegesis, the Hebrew word tshuva, you can see here in Hebrew, literally means returning the hay. And that's related to the four-letter name of God. And I'll get more into that later from the Arizal, what that means. The Tetragrammaton divine name has two letters hey, the second one corresponding to the lower revealed levels of the four world, and the first one corresponding to the higher concealed realms. Lower tshuva returns the second hay in rectification. Higher tshuva redeems the higher hay in holy ascent. The seventh Rebbe of Chabad taught the main focus of our generation is the higher tshuva. Accordingly, while the main Nagunim of the previous Chabad Rebbes were meditative, many of the Nagunim of the seventh Rebbe are joyfully in outward expressions. And so you can see a list of songs that were explicitly composed by the Rebbes themselves. And the Baal Shem Tov, and I'm going to sing some of these tunes. I'm even going to show the musical notes and papers to go more in detail about the structure of some of these tunes. So the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, the Baal Tanya, is known to have composed 10 songs. Here it only has listed a few. And I used to know all of these songs. I used to gather with Chabad Hasidim, and we would sing all of these. In fact, on the last day of Passover, usually people gathered together. It's actually called Sudas HaMashiach, the Suda of Messiah, and sing a song from each of the Rebbes till the last Rebbe. And so I'm going to look at some of these songs, and a lot of these songs are well known among all Hasidim, but in Chabad, This is canonized. So all Chabad students, rabbis know these songs, and when they conduct services or certain times a year, will sing these songs. So let me just read here quickly of the Rebbe. Seventh generation of Chabad, the Rebbe taught a new niggin on every Simchas Torah from 1954 until 1964, the year that his mother, Rebbetzin Chana Schneerson, died. They were composed by a variety of composers. Some say they were taught to him by his mother. In addition, he adopted the French national anthem, Les Marseillaise, and Simchas Torah in 1974. He also taught Samul Kol Nafshi and Asad of the Sedusa on Shabbos during the years 1953 and 1954, and V'hi Shiamda on Passover 1954. And there was also the Hasidic practice of taking general melodies and, so to say, sanctifying them. Some theories were that these were lost melodies going back to the temple, and that for whatever reason they became popular among Goyim, Gentiles, and the sages recognized them and re-sanctified them, or that it was some sort of tikkun, like tikkun olam, repair. And we'll get more into this, what exactly that means and the role of music as a form of repair of the world. But that taking a non-Jewish song and sanctifying it, like the French Les Marseillaise, that's if anyone knows in Chabad, there's two. There's Napoleon's March, the French bum 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 bum. The Rebbe was in France. He spoke French during the war. He studied in the Charbonne, famous French university, and he fled Russia to America through France during the Holocaust. And so he took this La Marseillaise and turned it into a Hasidic song. And also Napoleon's March was also turned into a Hasidic niggin. Yama mama 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 maya yam, ay ya mama yam, ay ya mama mama mama, ay ya mama mama mama. So that's I believe Napoleon's March, or at least the way it's sung in Chabad, and that was known in Chabad. I mentioned that Sam Aronoff video on Napoleon in France and the emancipation of Jews, but already back in the time of Napoleon's war march was turned into a Hasidic niggin, and in Chabad on Simchas Torah they sing this Napoleon's March, and so the Marseillaise also. So this idea of taking non-Jewish songs and, so to say, sanctifying them by chanting them for a holy purpose. And then there was actually composed Jewish music. Brundle, thanks for the super chat. Good to see you. So let me show this article here about Shamil. And this is an interesting story, and actually has stories of Leonard Bernstein putting on tefillin. And so this was a song on 1958 on Simchas Torah, as mentioned. The Rebbe for 10 years, every year taught a new song on Simchas Torah. So in 1958, the Rebbe taught this song, and this song is also taken from a non-Jewish melody and was, so to say, sanctified and had a story. And the Rebbe told the story and then sung the song and taught the song. And the song is very popular in Chabad today. And, God forbid, with the war in Ukraine, maybe the story is timely. So a story is told of a man named Shamil, leader of the assorted tribes that lived in the Russian Caucasian mountains over a century ago. The Russian army attacked these tribes, intending to deprive them of their freedom. Unable to vanquish the valiant warriors in battle, the Russian army leaders proposed a false peace treaty and thus succeeded in getting them to lay down their arms. Immediately afterwards, the Russians lured the Caucasian leader Shamil away from his stronghold and imprisoned him. Staring out of the window of his small, narrow cell, Shamil reflected on his days of liberty in the past and his current exile and helplessness. He bewailed his plight and yearned for his previous position of freedom and fortune. He consoled himself, however, with the knowledge that he would eventually be released from his imprisonment and return to his previous position with even more power and glory. It is the above thought that he expressed in this melancholy, yearning melody. The moral: the soul descends to this world from the heavens above, clothed in the earthly body of a human being. The soul's physical vestments here are really its prison cell, for it constantly longs for the spiritual heavenly fulfillments. The soul strives to free itself from the exile of the human body and its earthly pleasures by directing its physical being into the illuminated and living paths of Torah and mitzvahs. As I mentioned, God forbid, the soul wants to be as limited by the body. So this example of the king that was trapped into prison is like the example of the soul that's trapped into the body that yearns to return to God. God forbid, as the expression like death will set us free, and Chavos of us, the righteous people, look forward to our death. But this basic concept of the soul's descent into the body and the soul being trapped into the body, yearning to return to God. So some people say that one of the earlier Rebbes was in prison together with Shamil. That almost all of the rabbis were put into prison for various reasons, and that while he was in prison, he actually was in the same cell with Shamil, and he was singing this tune and told him his story, and it was, I guess, known among some Hasidim, the tune, but the Rebbe popularized it in 1958, and now it's a very popular Hasidic tune. So here I'll share in the chat a link of a popular Chabad singer singing this tune. So I'll try to sing a little bit of it, and okay, so if I didn't get disconnected again, hopefully I don't have internet issues. Okay, so Yama Mama oh Yama Yam ba bum 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 ba bum bum oi ma 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 yam ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum oi So this is the Shamil, the supposed legendary Caucasian leader that was tricked in from the mountains into prison by the Russians, and his song of longing. And so that's a popular song in Chabad till today. And you could see videos. I shared a link in the chat of popular Chabad singers singing that melody. So and this article here has a story about Leonard Bernstein, not Leonard Cohen, Bernstein, the famous composer, conductor, who in Portland met a Chabad chassid and sang that song for him and got him to put on tefillin. And so let's look more Chabad and further into these Chabad tunes. So I found this dissertation by Zachary Alexander Klein in UCLA. So he wrote his university dissertation on Chabad music and has some interesting insight. And actually, I'm going to go over some of the most famous tunes, the Baal Shem Tov's tune and the Dalet Bavos. And you could see he actually has the musical notation for it. So hopefully we'll have a better understanding about this hero's journey and the structure of Hasidic music and how it's supposed to help a person in the repentance process and have deep meaning. So let me read a little on the philosophy here. from this man's dissertation on Chabad music. Dveikus, Hebrew for cleaving, is a form of trance where one loses self-awareness and attains a godly awareness. The godly awareness represents a sort of tuning in to the godly presence or spark inside a person. This particular understanding of Dveikus is discussed in connection to the singing of a niggin by Rav Mindel. Under the influence of the niggin, the person discards, as it were, his outer shell, at any rate temporarily, becomes absorbed in himself and reaches out to commune with his very soul in all its purity. The nagina has a cathartic effect, purifying his mind and heart and elevating the chassid to a higher level of divine worship. From Rav Mindel's words, we see that through a niggin, a person is able to be in touch with their true self, the soul, as opposed to the false, superficial version of self. Nigunim are able to work therapeutically to shed layers of physicality-oriented consciousness and to reach a deeper level of divine consciousness. This reaching inwards towards true divine-centered self is considered a hallmark of Dveikus, as Ben Moshe articulates that according to Chassidus, in order to achieve Dveikus, the individual chassid must abnegate and nullify himself and direct all of his longings and efforts, both spiritual and material, at discovering the divine spark hidden within his soul through the path of Dveikus. He states that it is also within Dveikus that the state of ebb and flow can primarily be felt. Dveikus is an ongoing dynamic dialectic that strives to reach the light of God and turns back when God wishes to manifest himself in his kingdom. This is ongoing cyclic motion of ebb and flow that has no beginning and no end. Ben Moshe also discusses the particular effects that a niggin can have on the chassid singing it. The niggin experience denotes a two-way spiritual musical arousal of the chassid, displaying the excitement of the singers who experience the process of Dveikus. It shapes the live performance of the niggin, but the niggin also exerts a spiritual mystical influence. It stimulates those singing it and helps them continue in the process of Dveikus with all its ups and downs. The relationship between Dveikus and nigunim is stated by Amnam Shiloh in his work Jewish Musical Traditions. The importance of nigunim in the worshipper's ascent to achieving Dveikus is described there in detail. Worship of the deity in joy and ecstasy is the foundation stone of Hasidism, which endows the niggin with a central place in the movement. With its help, the chassid arises from one level to the next until he reaches the highest peak of enthusiasm, ecstatic dveikus. The ascent is often supported by a single musical motif steadily rising in pitch. Since the niggin becomes a form of spontaneity expressed prayer, neither its structure nor performance can be subjected to aesthetic criteria. Its nature is unquestionably ritualistic, and it offers great latitude for individual improvisation. For Shiloh's words, we must posit that nigunim transcend having the mere status of music and instead take on an almost non-musical, linguistically expressive form. The idea of the niggin being a form of spontaneously expressed prayer indicates the niggin itself is a sonic reflection of spiritual narratives taking place inside the mind and heart of the worshiper. The Rebbe Rashab is known to have said that when discussing a particular Dveikus niggin, that when one prays at length and one engages in divine service, the niggin comes automatically. In the involuntary singing of a niggin, one is sonically expressing the state of Dveikus that they are in. Just as the chassid becomes a vehicle or instrument for singing the niggin, so too has the chassid become an instrument of God. This is why certain Dveikus nigunim are simply referred to as Dveikus. Since the niggin is merely sonically expressing the state of being, the music is not only secondary, but nullified to the ecstasy being experienced. Every musical parameter of the niggin becomes subsumed with the experience of Dveikus. As Aviva Gottlieb Zornberg writes in her book, The Murmuring Deep, inspiration comes when one allows the spirit to play upon one. One becomes a harp, or an organ, or a shofar. The latter motif appears early Hasidic literature. In prayer or in preaching, the chassid opens himself to a form of involuntary speech, no longer regulating himself. He becomes the instrument of God. All that has been mentioned until now deals primarily with nigunim as they relate to a general state of Dveikus. When in such a state, the niggin acts as a sonic reflection of the Dveikus narrative. However, there's no way to tell the particular details of the Dveikus through the performance of a niggin, since the spiritual narrative is taking place with the consciousness of the chassid. Certain aspects can be expressed, such as mood, calm, and contemplative versus enraptured and passionate, but there's no way for us to know the particular thing that the chassid is expressing this mood about. When one is in the state of Dveikus, their consciousness is not an expression of a tabula rasa. Rather, there is a particular spiritual concept that they are experiencing, some spiritual narrative that they are playing out that acts as the interface between them and the divine. There are, however, certain nigunim in the canon that already come with a culturally well-established narrative, a story of some spiritual journey that the singer undergoes through singing it. It could be ascent through the spiritual worlds or spiraling out into eternity, the descent of the soul into the body, or the soulful expression of the chassid struggling to connect to the divine, paradoxically, though in spite of their physical existence. Regardless of whatever the narrative is, nigunim with such a narrative are known by Hasidim as possessing it and have writings by the Rebbes detailing them. Both types of nigunim with unknown spiritual narratives and nigunim with pre-established spiritual narratives, will be expanded here in this dissertation. As the Frierdiker Rebbe said, singing is the external dimension of the spiritual lifestyle of Hasidus. The inward aspect of the external dimension is its function of granting a man quarterly entry into the subtle levels of spiritual sensitivity. Implied in this is the sensation towards spirituality, specifically through the singing of niguna. And people want to read this whole paper. It's actually interesting. He talks about most Jewish music has what's called the Ava Rabbah scale, the Ukrainian Dorian, as the Baal Shem Tov and Hasidus started in Ukraine, and the harmonic minor, a little different than like A minor or D minor for people who are musical. You can see these exact scales, and maybe at a different time when I talk more about secular stuff, we'll talk more about actual music theory. And the just to give a time frame, the Baal Shem Tov would have been a contemporary of Bach, Johannes Sebastian Bach, and the Alter Rebbe would have been a contemporary of Mozart. And so the general structure, so in Hebrew they call like a tenua, which I guess would be like the theme. So music, most music is theme and variation, and I'll show that through these famous Hasidic tunes that they're a form of Hasidic and variation. And a fall is Yiddish. It's the melodic unit similar to a period. So like you said, like the ABC B structure. So like the line of music would be called the fall. So here he also mentions the ABCB structure. Here, the four-part form of the niggin parallels the four general stages of Dveikus, awakening the kavana through some sort of action, mesmerizing the animal soul through introspection, separation of the divine and animal souls through toil and effort, and union with the divine through absorption and focusing on the divine. While these three sources may show some slight variances in the way that Hasidim view musical form, one thing they all have in common is the idea of extra musical association and its direct influence on musical material. As I mentioned also, the four-part structure specifically is a meditation on the four-letter name of God, specifically in the Kabalistic system. Okay, so there's a book. I actually gave away my copy to a local musician called Sefer Nigunim, the Book of Nigunim, written by Chabad, and has stories and narratives. And the Rebbe's actually talked about the stories and the meaning of the song. So the first is called the Shalosh Tenu'os, the three stanzas that are known to be written by the Baal Shem Tov, his student, the Maggid of Mizrich, and the Alter Rebbe. And I was thinking there's another song that I always heard was accredited to the Maggid of Mizrich. It has a four-part structure. The third part was eluding me. So I'm like, ya, 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 ma, 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 da, 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 yum. Yum mum 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 da da dum. Ya 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 da 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 ya 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 da 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 yum. Yum ma ma da da ma ya 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 yum. Ya ya ma ma da 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 ya 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 da da dum bum. Ya 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 da da ma ya ya da da dum. So I believe that song. I missung that. I couldn't find a copy to the music to make sure I was singing it right. But that one, it said that would have been in the time of like Bach and Mozart, even before Mozart, is kind of melodious Hasidic tunes. This basic structure here, you can see the musical notes of the Baal Shem Tov. It said it comes in the time of Bach, and I'll put in the chat here. I'll put in the chat here the Lubavitcher Rebbe himself leading the chanting in 770. Oh, you can't really hear the Rebbe singing in this one. So people want to hear, what it would have sounded like in Lubavitch. So, like theme and variation. So, like simple, the music you'll hear at the beginning, it's the theme is just oy ya ya yum, oy ya ya yum, ya ma 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 ya ya ma. So there's this very simple theme, oy ya ya yum. And from the musical understanding, I say this would have been about the time of Bach, and so people know music theory and the history of music theory, the theme and variation, and so this is like the catch, and I'll talk more about the Kabalistic understanding of what this means for like fixing the soul, or this little key structure, the oy ya ya yum, and then the variation. We'll go through various themes on it, and then you could see it goes very high to the point where you're basically screaming. So of the added tune of the Maggid of Mizrich, and then the Alter Rebbe takes a slight variation on the tune and has it a full octave higher. And so if you're chanting with thousands of people, and you literally have, it's like in Karlin Stolen, where you would actually have people gathering in the field and screaming at the top of their lungs. I'll talk more about Aharon Karliner, who is like Adam Green's always talking about Mashiach ben Yosef. Many people held that he was Mashiach ben Yosef. He was actually assassinated, I believe, by the Russians. But said in his place where he prayed, the wall in front of him was full of blood. That he screamed his prayers at as hard as he could, so much so that he coughed up blood, and the wall in front of him of where he prayed was full of blood. And I'll sing a tune from him later. You get a feel of the the type of musical understanding. But even this song, you could have seen like Hasidim gathering and screaming in the fields. So this three-part, let me try to chant it to the best of my ability. You could find this on YouTube. It's your local Chabad, almost every local Chabad house around the world. You could assume that the rabbi or students of Chabad would be familiar with this tune. In general, Hasidim, not just Chabad, it's a well-known tune. Oy ya ya yum, oy ya ya yum, oy ya ya yum, oy ya ya yum. Yama mama moy, yama mama moy, ay 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 moy ay yama mo mama mo mama moy, yama moy ya ya moy ya mom. Oh yeah, mama, yeah. That would have been like the Baal Shem Tov part. Some people say that includes the Maggid's part, and then the next generation is basically a higher version of this, this theme. The oh yeah, Yama ma 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 ma. Ay 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 ay. Ay, 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 ya, ya. So actually, yeah, so you could see in the musical notation here that it's a full octave higher. So I could attempt to, it's almost like screaming. I'm not sure I could properly sing it, but you see this going at a higher octave of the simple theme and variation of the Baal Shem Tov himself. Like your Jews and your oh yeah 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 ma 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 yeah yeah ma. Yama mama ma yama yama mama ma yama mama ma oh yama mama ma ya 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 oh yama mama ma ya 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 yama mama ma ya ya ya. Ay, 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 ma, 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 ay, ay, ay. So you could pick, this is an old tune, so this would have like contemporary with Bach 200, 300, 350 years ago in the Ukraine, and you could picture Hasidic Jews gathering in the fields chanting this tune. And say it's not that melodious. So you get a feel what chanting would have been like in the time of the Baal Shem Tov. As I mentioned, that's the time of Bach, where music theory is just getting its form. So the Alter Rebbe, who's a contemporary of Mozart, as said he wrote 10 famous songs, and his most famous is probably called the Dalet Bavos, and it's sung at special times in Chabad. And here is the musical notation of it. Anyone who wants, you could see here the Rebbe in 770 chanting this tune. You clicked on the link, and I think Bakir, Bragg here, thanks for the super chat. 311, yeah, I'm talking about the purpose of music, specifically Jewish music and Hasidic philosophy, which will hopefully lead to a series on general the meaning of music, while I'll be interpreting more modern music and the direction of society and the hero's journey. But I wanted to start with the precursor of my introduction to music was through being Hasidic, where the sound is working on parts. I had another power outage here. Crazy. So let me just check to see if I'm live, if the power's working. Break here, thanks for the other super chat. So I'm connecting through my cell phone now, so hopefully this is working. Okay, so take I'm back just on without my mic. So it'll take like 3 or 4 minutes for my internet to work. And you can see I'm um, connecting through my cell phone. I had to link through my cell phone. Power outage, so crazy, like severe wind here in this area, and break here. Yeah, Halsey hasn't invited me. Like if Halsey invited me, I don't have Halsey's contact actually. Like he used to be on Twitter, and so I God forbid he keeps on getting on Twitter. So if he has Twitter or invites with Halsey, I'm happy to talk to him if he's sends me an invite. But I don't have Halsey's contact information, and he hasn't invited me. So power is here at this time. My power is on for my house internet, but get back on, and I'm about to sing the and I'll wait till my internet gets back working because better plugged in. I'll get better sound reception on my other computer. Crazy. I appreciate the search for the chat for a second. Sticker, and appreciate that. Now, Adam Green's still around on alternative platforms, and so if there was a specific thing for Doooovid, doing at Doooovid, it'll be like another minute or two till my internet gets back up, and so I could have the better mic quality of my new MacBook. Also mention like the Hare Krishna Lord Chaitanya congregational chanting. So Hasidic philosophy has a dual purpose of one of the connection of the soul. I'm going to go more into deeper stuff on the Kabbalah and the deeper understanding of music from a mystic perspective, and then also the communal. So Hasidim gather. Like there's a Tish. It's part of Hasidic culture. Everyone gathers Friday and sings. So if you're Hasid, even if you're not musical, singing is part of the religion. Together we chant. Everybody does it. You're supposed to do it. It's one of the important aspects of being sick is this regular gathering for chanting. So I got Dishan calling me. Dishan, I'm in the middle of streaming. Ask the rabbi now. Just okay. And yeah, so Dishan just called it. Actually, I'm hoping to have Dishan in my house again soon, and we're going to talk about politics here in Michigan with the whatchamacallit, the Democratic primaries and various things coming up. So hopefully Dishan appears in the chat. You have crazy the power outage here. So hopefully the sound is good, and I'm back. So crazy of the power outage here, and if just make sure this is working, and I'll keep my cell phone around. Like God forbid if I need to plug in through my cell phone again to have another power outage. So at least thank God my cell phone is working, and I'll be able to connect. So let me just again to have no. Okay, so here is the musical notation of the Dalet Bavos, probably the single most famous Chabad tune, and it's as I say that the Alter Rebbe is a contemporary of Mozart, and the late mid 1700s, before America. It said like R Aharon Karliner, one of the first tunes I sang, they call Echsof, and who they traveled together. And at the time, Chabad's famous for making Bali Chuvas. At the time, it was actually R Aharon Karliner who was famous for making Bali Chuva. But they both started movements, became head rabbis of various towns, the town of Lubavitch, or the town of Karlin, Stolin, and developed Hasidus and a large following. Dishan, thanks for showing up. So hopefully he's probably familiar with this tune. They sing it at Chabad weddings, on the seventh night of Passover, on Shavuos, on Sukkot, on certain special days in Chabad. And you could see the basic theme and variation structure here that of the Dalet Bavos, and this, so it has 4 parts. So it's not a traditional Hasidic tune that's a meditation on the 4-letter name of God. It has a slightly different structure. It's more theme and variation, a meditation, and people could read. I'll put in the chat again this whole dissertation if people want to know more about Chabad philosophy. So, Yama mama ma, Yama mama ma, Maya mama mama, Yama mama 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 moya, Yama mama mama. Anyone reads musical notation, you see these are each supposed to be repeated twice. For the sake of brevity, I'm not going to repeat them twice, but it's almost all Hasidic music, like I quoted the Rebbe, first makes an impression and then is carved in and is repeated twice. Anyone knows how to read musical notation, you can see the 2 dots. So I'll repeat that first part, but I may not repeat all the parts twice. There's plenty of tunes on YouTube that you could see of famous musicians, Hasidic singers singing this. Yama mama ma. So that's your theme, the yama mama ma, and variation. And you could see by the end, it will be almost a whole octave higher as you get to like line 29. You could see that the theme is basically almost a whole octave higher. Let me take a drink here first. Yama mama ma, Yama mama ma, oy yama mama bam, Yama mama 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 moya, Yama mama bam, Yama mama 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 moya, Yama mayam, oy yama mama, Yama mama 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 moya, Yama nai nai nam, Yai nai 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 nai, ayam ayam, I did I. Yam, mayam. Actually, I apologize. I went to the 4th one instead of the 3rd one. Yai nai yama mama 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 mama. I apologize. I'm messing this up. People could look at the tune. I'll sing the high part. I have to prepare this better. My sight reading, but I'll sing the high part that the 4th part. Yama mama, yama mama yam, ayam oyam, ayayayayam, oyam oyam, ayayayamam. Ay 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 moy ay ay moy yam ma 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 oy 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 yam ay 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 yam oy 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 yam ay 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 yam. Yama mama moya yama moya oy yama Bum, bum, ba, bum, bum, bum. Apologize, I messed that one up. My apologies to Chabad. There's plenty of good tunes. You read the paper. But you get a feel for the hero's journey in congregational chanting, as I tried to write in my tune, of theme and variation, like the Lubavitch Rebbe, like the Baal Shem Tov, Yama Mama, Oy 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 Yam. So here you have the basic theme, Yama Mama Mam, and at the high part, it basically takes up the whole octave higher, and you'll see the high note of will even be a full octave higher. And this is the concept of the communal hero's journey, where you take the congregation on a journey to the higher level. And if you could read the music, you could see, here very obviously, it literally takes the congregation an octave higher that you're singing. And, I'm even, breathing heavily, physically stressed because of the excursion of singing and trying to reach a whole octave higher. And this is the really of all music. All music, as I mentioned in my article, takes the same form of the hero's journey and taking a person to a higher level. Specifically, as said, like Hasidic, the meditation on God's name, taking the person to the spiritual realm as a meditative exercise of distancing the person from the physical garments of the body to the soul connection. And it'd be actual congregational. So, okay, not everyone's a good singer. Not everyone could reach the high notes. But, when you're part of a large group singing together, you would at least try. So, when it comes the high part, the ya ma 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 ya ma ya ma ya ay ya 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 ay ya ma ya ay ya 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 ay ya 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 ma ya ma ya. It's a full octave higher, and it's representative of the ascent of the soul into higher realms. And so to say, everyone in the congregation is taken along for the journey. And it's a basic theme of all music, not just Hasidic music. And so Oswald in the chat, Joseph Campbell. No, I was Hasidic for many years before I was involved in Hindu chanting. It's similar. I'm focused on the Hasidic Jewish approach to it, although the hero's journey meaning of music is basically the meaning, even Kabalistically, which I'll get into more after this. So I just want to show this article, this thesis from a Chabad Chassid who did his college thesis on the music. And so let me try to get more into the deeper Hasidic meaning of music. But you'll see the Hasidus and the Kabbalah actually teaches that the spiritual and the materialistic nature is the exact same. And because the material is sustained from the spiritual, that every point, kind of Platonic, even like, Christopher Ben Jerkness, God forbid, or even modern day scholarship, that the Kabbalist system maybe comes from Hindus or the Greeks. And it's somewhat Platonic, although it has an exact working structure, as there being a parallel in the spiritual world to the material realm, and there being some sort of sustainment of the material realm and the spiritual realm. And the Kabbalistic system, like you could see, of the lowest level of Malchus kingship, of the lowest of the four worlds, is where the material realm starts. And the highest realm, Kesser, the crown of the highest world, Atzilus, the world of emanation, is the beginning of the godly realm, the spiritual realm. And then you have like the tzimtzum, the contractions, that get from the godly realm to the material realm, and you had different pathways through this structure that would lead to the material realm. Here you have the manly form of the creation, a depiction of the four worlds. And so the process of getting from God to the material realm is actually parallel, whether it's for good or bad. So the musical structure for like a holy tune that is meant to connect a person to God is actually the exact same for secular music, or even, so to say, satanic music, or as I'll try to get into future streams, the hero's journey to the loser's journey. And Oswald hopefully gave me you'll hook me up. Maybe I'll try to get in contact with Ebert after Passover and reach out to talk to him about Campbell in relation to it. But I wanted to put this stream out here as an Ask the Rabbi on. So if you want, I'll do a quick Yiddish chant. This is my favorite Yiddish chant. It comes from a ancient Hebrew tune, Oide Lekel, Baran Yachad, that'll praise God by the sunrise, and it has a Yiddish refrain. If you know German, maybe you'll understand it. Ich Leib is dir, Kitschel Brichi, die weißt, was jeder tit in Herzen kleiner. Ich leib in Dank mit mein Gesang, zusammen mit all the Morgensterne. So that's an old, think going back a few hundred years, Yiddish tune. Ich leib is dir, I love you. Kitschel Brichi, that's Hebrew for the blessed one, the Holy One, blessed be He. Die weißt, was jeder tit in Herzen kleiner. You know what every person does in their heart and smallness. Ich leib es dir, die weißt, was jeder tit in Herzen kleiner. Ich leib in Dank, I love and thank, mit mein Gesang, with all my strength and health, zusammen mit all the Morgensterne, together with all the stars in the sky. So if you're a German speaker, I don't know if that made sense to you. That is a famous Hasidic. There's a lot of Hasidic tunes that are in Yiddish. So maybe before I do some of the last stuff I have here on the deeper mystical Kabalistic understanding of chanting, I'll do a quick chant just to the four-part structure. I'll do one other Yiddish tune. This one, I guess two favorite ones. Actually, I learned Yiddish largely from Yiddish Classics II. So if there's any Hasidim out there, they know, the famous, let me see if it's, I studied in Bubov, and Yiddish Classics II, I think, is from Bubov, Yiddish Classics Volume 2. So I learned Yiddish in Israel, but I use this CD largely, listening to it over and over again to, kind of learn Yiddish. So there were two songs on it I listened to a lot, the Oide Lekel, song number 3, and Winkele, song number 5. And so this one is also one of my favorite Yiddish songs. In a Winkele stein, a jeder wei, weil sein Kind zur Milchama gein, in the Treiben vom weiße Gitzen, steht in Arbeit, zu sein Taten in Himmel. Tati, 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 wir haben schon genug da gemacht. Wir haben schon genug da gemacht. And that it was actually someone, I think the singer is an old man. I'm not sure if he's still alive, that I think went through the war. So anyone check out Yiddish Classics II. In the Winkel steht a Yidder bite. In a corner stands a Yid. He prays. Steht in a Winkel steht a Yid Irvine. In a corner stands a Yid. He cries. Steht in bite. He stands and prays. Says Taten in Himmel, to his Father in heaven. And I'm not in the Weisse Gitzen. I don't even know what that means. So in a Winkel steht a jeder Wein, weil sein Kind zu Milchama gein. So in a corner stands a Yiddy cries while his kid goes off to war. Steht in the Weisse gets in the Weiss gets. I don't even in the white. I don't even know what Gitzen means, but so the Yid's in the corner as his son goes off to war, crying to God, to his Father in heaven. Tati Tati mir haben schon genickt demak. Haven't we been through enough? So that's your classical Yiddish Jewish cry, Father, Father, like Avinu Malkeinu, Father, our King. Mir haben schon genickt gemacht. Haven't we been through enough already? So that's one also a popular Yiddish tune. Any Bubavers out there would be familiar with that song. I'll do another quick Hasidic tune, just the 4-part structure. I've done this on Week in Review a few times. One of my favorites. It's actually Yom Tov Ehrlich's song, and actually studied in yeshiva in Karlin with Yom Tov Ehrlich's grandson. And he was a famous Yiddish composer. And this fits the general 4-part structure. It's also on Yiddish Classics II and has Yiddish words to it. Yamamamamama, yamamamamama, yamamamamamamamamamama, yamamama, yamamamamama, ya, yamamama, yamamamamama, ya. And so just to understand the 4-part structure, the first part is yamamamamama, kind of like you're just like oi oi theme that will get higher to carry it to the higher level. And the third part, which would be the third letter of God's name, taking you to the heavenly realms, has a bridge, and then you're going back to the second part. So a lot of Hasidic tunes will have like a yeah before the fourth part, some sort of musical we call the bridge that serves a musical function. We talk about that more later. So I'll do the whole tune now, and hopefully you'll notice the first part, the second part, the bridge to the high part, and then the repetition of the second part, which will mirror the meditation on God's name. Yamamamamama, yamamamamama, yamamamama, ya, yamamama, yamamamamama, yamamama, And that's actually a Yiddish song. It has Yiddish words. Yom Tov Ehrlich was a Hasidic Yiddish composer, but his tunes are pretty well known. Actually, as I studied with his grandson in Jerusalem and New York. Okay, so let me finish up what I prepared, and we'll talk more about the deeper Kabbalistic insight into this hero's journey and this Tikkun Olam rectification. And it's possible that, yes, this head shaking is part of the ritual, because it's like it's a disconnection from the physical, connection to the soul. So it's saying what I'm looking at in the material world, as I become closer to my soul, I'm like, no, 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 no. So when I'm in my body, I'm comfortable with the material realm. But as I get closer to the true source of my essence, my soul, I become less comfortable with the material realm. And, so the head shaking is common, like anyone knows, Jewish prayer service, the shuckling, Hasidim, it could be ecstatic. The original Hasidim, did flips and all sorts of ecstatic movements to, enliven the soul. And so let's look at a deeper Hasidic Kabbalistic understanding of what's going on. So in Jewish prayers, there's what's called the L'Shem Yichud, and it comes from the Zohar. So just put here in the chat Zohar of this the Shem Yichud statement coming from verse in Exodus, Vasili Mikdash Vishkanti Besoicham, and let them make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell among them, referring to the temple, but maybe also specifically to my heart. Make my heart a sanctuary for God, so that God will dwell within me. And the prayer for the unification of the Holy One, blessed be He, and the Shekhinah, with awe and love and awe, and complete unification on behalf of all of Israel. Here we come to establish connection with this action to its supernal and spiritual root, to give gratification to our Maker and do the will of our Creator, and the beneficent of our God be upon us, and the work of our hands establish our connection below, and the action connect Him. And it refers to connecting the first two letters of God's name with the second two letters of God's name. So here, here was the Wikipedia just on the four worlds. I've been showing just some pictures from Google of various images people could see of diagrams of the tree of life or Kabbalistic template of the four worlds. And the connection has said that Hasidic songs in general are meant to be a meditation on the four-letter name of God. So here is the four worlds, sometimes countered, five worlds, is the essence of the Kabbalistic systems. You have the 10 emanations, and the four worlds. And you could have a correspondence within the 10 sphere system. You could have a correspondent to the four-letter name of God. Like here, like in this picture, where you have the four letters just in one world of one of the 10 spheres, and then you have with the four worlds, each with their separate 10 emanations. So this unification of the connecting of the Yud-He with the Vav-He is in relation to this understanding of the four worlds. So just the basic precursor, people could read Chabad books, or there's lots of literature on it. But I'll just read the Wikipedia. The four worlds are spiritual heavenly realms in a descending chain, although the lowest world, Asiya, has both a spiritual and physical aspect. The physical level of Asiya is our physical finite realm, including the cosmological universe studied by science. Consequently, the Kabbalah becomes more of a metaphysical study. The terms higher and lower are used as metaphors for being closer or further from divine consciousness. Revelation and eminence. The 16th century systemization of Kabbalah of Moshe Cordova brought the preceding interpretation in schools into the first complete rational synthesis. Subsequent doctrines of Kabbalah from Rabbi Isaac Luria describe the initial tzimtzum withdrawing of the universal divine consciousness that preceded creation to allow room for created beings on lower levels of consciousness. Lower levels of consciousness require the self-perception of independent existence by the created beings on each level to prevent their loss in identity before the magnificence of God. This illusion increases with more force in each subsequent descending realm. The number of gradations between the infinite and the finite is likewise infinite and arises from innumerable progressively strong concealments of the divine light. Nonetheless, the four worlds represent fundamental categories of divine consciousness from each other, which delineates their four descriptions. Consequently, each world also psychologically represents a spiritual rung of ascent into human consciousness as it approaches the divine. Kabbalah distinguishes between two types of divine light that emanate through the 10 spheroid divine emanations from the infinite, Ein Sof, without end, to create or affect reality. This is a continual flow of a lower light, the light of immanence that fills all worlds, is the creating force in each descending world that itself continually brings everything in that level of existence into being from nothing. It is this light that undergoes the various divine concealments and contractions as it descends downward to create the next level and adapts itself to the capacity of each created being on each level. A transcendent higher level of the light that surrounds all worlds would be the manifestation on a particular level of a higher light which above the capacity of that realm to contain. This is ultimately rooted in the infinite light that preceded creation. The Tzimtzum in the spirit rather than the source of the imminent light of the Kav, the first emanation of creation after the contraction in the teaching of Isaac Luria. Consequently, all the worlds are dependent on their continual existence of the flow of divinity they constantly receive from the divine will to create them. Creation is continuous. The faculty of divine will is represented in the spirit by first superconsciousness, sphere of Kesser crown, that transcends the lower 9 spheres of consciousness, intellect, and emotion. Once the divine will is manifest, then it actualizes creation through divine intellect and subsequently divine emotion until it results in action. The reference to temporal cause and effect is itself a metaphor. The psychology of man also reflects the divine psychology of the Sephirot, as man is created in the image of God. In the man, the activation of willpower through intellect and emotion until deed requires time and subsequent cause and effect. In the divine spirit, in their activation of creation, this does not apply, as limitations only apply to creation, not creator. The book of Job states, "From my flesh I see God." In Kabbalah and Hasidism, this is understood to refer to the correspondence between the divine psychology of the four worlds and the Sphirot, which human psychology and the spirit and the soul of man. From understanding the Kabalistic description of the human soul, we can grasp the meaning of the divine scheme. Ultimately, this is seen as the reason that God chose to emanate his divinity through the 10 Sphirot and chose to create the corresponding chain of four worlds. He could have chosen to bridge the infinite gap between Ein Sof and the world by a leap of divine decree. Instead, the spirit of four world allowed man to understand divinity through divine manifestation. By understanding himself, the verse in Genesis of this correspondence also describes the feminine half of creation. So God created man in his own image. The image of God he created him, male and female he created them. Consequently, some of the spheres are feminine, and the Shekhinah, the imminent divine presence, is seen as feminine. It is intimate relation between the divine scheme of the world of man that allows man's ascent more easily to divine consciousness, Dvekas. So this is the, some of the basic precursors of Kabbalah. Probably a lot of people are familiar with this. And so this relates to the music and this other concept of Kabbalah called Yichudim, unifications, which I mentioned that the Shem Yichud for the purpose of unification prayer that is said before a lot of prayers. So Yichudim is a specific form of Jewish meditation and Kabbalistic Jewish mysticism, especially denoting the complete meditative method developed by Isaac Luria. The term Yichud, so the Zohar speaks of two types of Yichudim in general, Yichud Ma'uban and Yichud Abba. The divine names derive from the esoteric expansion of the Tetragrammaton, representing different supernal forces. Kabbalistic theosophy explores the esoteric function of the Yichudim in the unfolding creation of the spiritual realms, while meditative Kabbalah experiences and influences these supernal forces through the human psyche as mystical kavanah intentions during prayer. Jewish observance or isolated practice. Kabalistic doctrine sees unification in the divine realm among the spheros and between God and lower creation as the theurgic restorative task of man. Among the spheros, this is symbolized by the unification of the male principle Tiferet and the female Malchut. And Yichud Ma'uban is the human psyche, unification of one's emotions with action. Yichud Abba is the process whereby Kabalistic traces an object or concept through the physical world up through the various levels of God's creative process or of that object or concept. The goal is the unification is twofold. One, to uncover the inherent godliness in the subject that is being meditated on, and second, to bring godliness back home, so to speak. Once the godliness of the thing is uncovered, the Kabbalist will endeavor to conceptually understand how all the levels that once separated him and God are actually all one. Hasidic thought describes two levels of defined Yichud with creation, in which higher unity, in which creation is nullified with divine totality, and lower unity in which creation perceives its own existence dependent on God. In the Lurian, Isaac Luria, the father of modern Kabbalah, developed the Zoharic references to Yichudim into complete esoteric system of meditation based on new mythological scheme of Lurianic Kabbalah. Outwardly, the Zohar appears to be solely a theosophical text. However, through Luria's theosophical description of the cosmic structure as a complete interacting dynamic system, the soul of man embodies the dynamically interacts with the supernal processes of creation, where Moses Cordova previously developed linear Zoharic method of meditation based on his conception of the spheros as discrete powers. Luria's Yechidim meditation method is based on the spheros as an anthropomorphic, mutually enclothing, part-soothing the divine personas. His systemization of Zoharic doctrine into comprehensive processes enabled him to extract Yehudim meditation practices from the most esoteric descriptions in the Zohar. These elite meditative practices engage the attention of the subsequent Kabbalistic worship and were further expanded and practiced in communal setting. And obviously Chabad is largely based on Lurianic Kabbalah. So let me read quickly here an article from Reb Norman Lamb of blessed memory, who was the head of Yeshiva University, who wrote substantial amounts of literature. Just read a little bit here on this concept of unity. Because the Hasidic niggin and theme of Hasidic music is based on the concept of unification. I'm even going to look at the reincarnation, the connection to reincarnation also. The oneness of God, here's the unity theme and its implication for moderns by Norman Lamb. And so say this unification is mainstream Jewish theology, not just Hasidic Kabbalistic. Almost all Jews accept this premises of kind of the purpose of creation. The oneness of God is universally acknowledged as the foundation stone of Judaism and its main contribution to the world. The theme of Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, underlies every simple aspect of Jewish life and thought and permeates every page of its vast literature. So powerful is this vision of God's unity that inevitably it must express the corollary that divine unity is the source of a unity that encompasses all existence. Nowhere is the idea of the unity of God given more poignant and intense expression than in the Kabbalah. In Jewish mysticism, the unity of God is not only the mightiest themes, but it becomes a living reality, perhaps the only reality. God's unity is taken not alone as an arithmetic proposition. Just share this in the chat if anyone is interested. God's unity is taken not alone as an arithmetic proposition, but as the unification of all of existence and all of its awesome diversity through God. It is symbolized in the Kabbalah by the unity within God himself, and this unity elaborated, explained, enhanced, and expounded by Kabbalists from the Zohar through the late Rev Kook, of which our modern world stands in such desperate need. if it was ever necessary to reaffirm this theme with its conscious rejection of the conflict, multiplicity, and fragmentation, it is today when mankind stands poised, ready to blow itself to bits both physically and conceptually. In this paper, we shall examine the treatment of the unity of God in one expression of the Jewish spirit, the Kabbalah, particularly in the Zohar, and the works of the most recent exponent, the late Rev Kook, the chief rabbi of the Holy Land, in one sacred institution of Judaism, the Sabbath, in one famous hymn, the prayer book, the Kadodi, a Kabalistic poem which celebrates the Sabbath. Our purpose is not a historical presentation of the unity theme, but rather to see what it can yield for us in the way of instruction, its implication for moderns. And I'm just going to read the first part. The reader who is unacquainted with the atmosphere and terminology of the Kabbalah should be aware of the fact that the mystical concepts by their very nature are incapable of precise descriptive articulation. They can be expressed only suggestively in symbolic form, often quite complex in structure. The terms used may therefore sometimes sound absurd and unreal, even when they strive to grasp the very essence of the reality itself. The reader who will regard the discussion of the Kabbalah is too recondite may safely begin with the section titled The Implications. The world of disunity. The Zohar, the source book of Kabbalah, describes the mundane world as the Alma de Peruta, the world of disunity and diversity. The unification of existence, the overcoming of this fragmentation, is to be sought in the establishment of the Alma de Yichud, the world of unity, which is the higher unity within God himself. The true unity belong beyond all others is that of Kidsha Brichi, the Holy One, blessed be He, and His Shekhinah, His presence and indwelling. The apparent divorce of one from the other is what accounts for all that is wrong within the world, including evil. The failure of mankind is to be found in this world of disunity. The function of man on earth is to help overcome this disunity or schism and reestablish the primordial divine harmony of the Holy One and His Shekhinah, God in His transcendence and His immanence, the world of unity. This passion for the unity of God, for the healing of the breach within Him, was given expression in the most powerful metaphor available. In human life, it is the erotic urge, which is the most intense symbol of union and oneness. Hence, erotic imagery was freely used in representing the drive for unity and the overcoming of the world of disunity. Parenthetically, it is in this place to mention Professor Gershon Shlom's observation that rarely did the Zohar ever use this kind of symbolism to express the urge of Dveikus between God and man. The Holy One was considered the male element, and the Shekhinah was almost always the female element. Shekhinah is thus known by a variety of names, all emphasizing the feminine quality, by thus assigning genders to these different aspects of the Creator, and Kabbalah was available to tap the deepest wells of human experience to express its overwhelming yearning for the unification of God and the firm establishment in the world of unity. The role of man. The reestablishment of the world of unity was not considered by the Kabbalist an independent divine activity in which man is merely a passive observer who can do no more than exercise theosophic insight. Man is deeply involved with God in the drama of unification. The breach is not intrinsic. That would be a serious departure from the pure monotheism of all Judaism. God is, of course, absolutely one. It is rather only apparent. The error of the failure that brought about this breach can be traced to man, not God. It is therefore man who must initiate the reunification, and the ascendancy of the unity of God is both to be reflected in and caused by the unity in man's own life. The act of breach or separation, the conception of the Shekhinah as a truly separate entity rather than just an apparent distinction in the Godhead, was recognized by the Kabbalah as a danger to monotheism and is identified as the primal mystical sin of man. The division introduced between Shekhinah and the Holy One was called by the Zohar the cutting of the plants. The plants symbolizing the spheros, the emanations. This was the crime of Elisha ben Abua, the sage turned heretic, which the Talmud describes as a cutter of plants. This too was the original sin of Adam by acting as the eating of the forbidden fruit. Primordial man separated the Shekhinah, represented by the tree of knowledge, from the rest of the spheros, the Holy One represented by the tree of life. The punishment for this dualism, the divorce of the Shekhinah for the Holy One from the Holy One, is the silencing of Shekhinah, God's immanence, which now becomes known as speech without sound, or personified as the lonely woman. and the ordaining of death for mankind. Death is not a new decree issued by God, thus external to man. It is inherent in man in potential and is awakened by his sin. Death is, in the Kabbalah, also represented by a tree. The tree of death lies dormant within the tree of knowledge and is inactive as long as there's no disruption between the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. That is the Holy One and the Shekhinah. But once the separation is effected, the tree of death emerges from the tree of knowledge, which has been cut off from the tree of life. Man must die when he upsets the harmony of the divine unity. His life must therefore be dedicated to the reestablishment of the world of unity. In many other ways, the Kabbalah expresses the idea that the drama of the separation and the unity is not a purely theocentric plot, but includes man as a major protagonist in the grand sweep. The Zohar refers to man as the synthesis of all spiritual forces that went into the work of creation. Man in his pure pre-sin state reflected the hidden organism of God's own life. In that pure state, according to the author Shari Ora, there was a free interchange between the higher and lower worlds. When Adam sinned, order turned into chaos, and the Shekhinah was, so to speak, cut loose from the Holy One, and only through the act of redemption will the exiled Shekhinah be reunited with the Holy One in return for the original divine harmony. Further human effort, the impulse from below evokes a corresponding impulse from above. The whole unification of God takes place in the soul of man, which is absorbed in the ultimate unification. Hence the remarkable appellation of man in the lower Shekhinah, the union of the Shekhinah and the Holy One, which is regarded as taking place, as we shall explain later in greater detail, every Sabbath Eve, has its correspondence effect on human life. The scholar is expected to cohabit with his wife on Sabbath Eve. Every true marriage maintains a symbolic realization of the union of the Holy One and the Shekhinah. Man is thus the active partner of God in the whole process of unification, an agent of the original disruption of universal harmony. He must become the agent of its redemption, restoring the unity of God's name. The purpose of the performance of every mitzvah is therefore the act of restoration. Hence, every religious performance is to be introduced by the formula for the sake of uniting the Holy One and to Shekhinah, the restoration by means of Torah, mitzvahs, and prayer, with its many mystical intentions, becomes the task of man in the future of the function of the universe. So that's the basic Hasidic theology, Kabalistic Jewish theology of really the purpose of everything, the purpose of the whole world. And let me quickly get two more things to look at. So I'll just put here in the chat, I found another dissertation on Hasidic thought. This one's almost 700 pages. So anyone eager, some free material, a public dissertation on Hasidism, you look at that from Harvard. So here's a little bit just like the controversy of Hasidim and non-Hasidim in this prayer that people might be familiar, that people say before this for the sake of unification. So I found this from a blog of a sofer, someone who writes Torah scrolls, and these prayers are important for the writing of Torah scrolls, but just it gives a nice overview. The Talmud in Brachos mentions a passing of a classical Talmudic dispute if a mitzvah needs intent, mitzvah tzrikas kavana, or not. For instance, if someone eats matzah in Pesach without any intent, just eats it, did he fulfill his obligation? This is a major topic of discussion that affects all mitzvahs, and halakha seems to require a person to have some sort of intent, or at least not a negating intent to perform the mitzvah. Many rabbis encourage the recital of a short pre-mitzvah prayer, which usually is Hareni Mizamin SP, a verbal declaration that a person is focusing in what he will shortly do. The concept is accepted by all streams of Judaism, as it's always a good idea to prepare ourselves and verbally declare that we are conscious before performing a mitzvah. The Kabbalah movement brought this concept a step further and added another dimension to the preparatory prayers, a prayer that our mitzvah will have a mystical impact in our celestial worlds. The prayer is called the Shem Yichud, and its mentions of Shekhinah, the Tetragrammaton, and how the name is divided, all very complicated and deep Kabbalah concepts. The inclusion of this in the daily prayers was novel and controversial. The actual basic, the Shem Yichud, for the sake of the unification between the Holy One, blessed is, the Holy One, blessed be He, and Shekhinah with fear and loving, in order to unify the name Yod-He with Vav-He in perfect unity, and the name of all of Israel. Not all of the rabbis were in favor of adding this prayer in everyone's routine, most notably the Noda B'Yehuda, Rabbi Landau, chief rabbi of Amsterdam, wrote a famously sharp condemnation of those promoting the Shem Yichud, and famously declared that the Hasidim Yekashel Bam, that effectively calling Hasidim sinners, for he contended that this Kabalistic prayer couldn't be understood even by learned scholars, therefore was not appropriate to encourage the common folk to recite it. One should contextualize his harsh opposition to his era and time when Hasidism was a novelty and revolutionary to conservative leaders like Reb Landau. Reb Landau, like the Vilna Gaon, held that a bracha itself is a preparation for the mitzvah, and therefore there was never any need for adding prayers before saying the blessing for any mitzvah. When a mitzvah has no bracha, for example, when writing a Sefer Torah, then the Noda B'Yehuda conceded that a preparatory prayer is warranted in order to confirm a person's awareness, and the actual prayer was shortened to the point, I'm doing this in order to fulfill my Creator's mitzvah. Rav Yaakov Emden, a contemporary of Rav Landau, and other influential leader, did include the Shem Yichud prayer in his popular siddur, the Yavet Siddur. However, he noted that his father, the famous Chacham Tzvi Ashkenazi, used to follow Kabbalistic guidelines, but was careful not to do so publicly. In other words, Rabbi Emden addresses Rabbi Landau's concern that the prayer is not intended for everyone, and invites his readers to recite it privately, like his own father used to do. Notwithstanding the objection of some traditionalist leaders, most communities around the world adopted the custom of reciting the Shem Yichud before mitzvah, most notably the Sephardic Jews, who had always favored the adoption of Kabbalah in their daily routine, and Hasidim, whose movement was sparked by Kabbalah. And today, even non-Hasidic communities have accepted this prayer, and one could find this prayer even in the Art Scroll Siddur. And so this article goes on then about the role of writing a Sefer Torah, and which was probably the intention of his article, but it was just a nice overview. So the last thing I want to share here is about reincarnation, and specifically from the Arizal, from the gates of reincarnation, to this concept I talked about at the beginning of the Tshuva. Tshuva, written in Hebrew, could be understood etymologically to be the returning of the He, and the He referring to the He in God's name, which would be the lowest level of material creation, the He that represents this world of Asiya, where we reside in the material realm. And so we'll go into the deepest understanding of the purpose of song and unification in general. So that unification, according to Kabbalah and Hasidus, is the purpose of everything, of all of creation, of everything in the world, of the origin of evil, of the purpose of man, of the messianic secret, and so on and so on. But also specifically related to music, and also, as you say, that this Kabbalistic template refers to the origin of, so to say, evil also. If you could even say that there was such a thing as evil, because everything has a connection to the divine, and so to say that's the purpose of man, is to return the lost sparks to its origin, or repairing the world, the rectification of evil. So here is chapter 21 of the Gates of Reincarnation of the Arizal. And I'll just read a tiny bit here. People who want a deeper understanding can look into this on their own. Tshuva is a function of Ima, and Gilgal, reincarnation, is a function of Abba. Ima's mother, Gilgal is father. So repentance is a function of the mother, reincarnation is a function of the father. Therefore, anyone who sins and repents, which is called tshuva, rectifies the blemish which is sufficient. However, if he does not repent, then he will have to reincarnate to rectify his sins. a function of the Father, which is called makshava, thought. With respect, it says he thinks thoughts so that he who is banished is not cast away from him, since by the bringing him back in reincarnation, he rectifies his transgression. The point is that God in his love is so concerned about fixing the soul that he always provides a means for its repair. The best thing is if one takes the initiative to fix himself through tshuva. If not, providence still steps in and shuffles the life cycle. This requires an even greater juggling of destiny than if one repents. Therefore, it comes from Abba, a higher source than Ima. We will now explain the concept of tshuva, repentance, since we have already began in chapter 6 discussing the steps of repentance, of which there are 8. However, here will we discuss another manner in the process explained by Rabbi Matya ben Cherish in the last chapter of the Gemara Yoma on Yom Kippur regarding the 4 divisions of atonement, one who transgresses a positive mitzvah and repents. In general, tshuva means tshuv hay, as stated in the Zohar, restoring the hay. And you just diagrammatically of the 4 worlds, this is the unification in like the return of the lost sparks of the lowest realm, which is represented by the hay. So repentance is returning this hay. I talk about like Kabbalah saying the God particles, literally Hebrew letters. For it is well known, man incorporates all the worlds, even though he may not presently merit all of them. Perhaps only the nefesh of Asiya, still he is created with the potential to achieve all of them through his actions. All those levels that become dependent upon him as he grows according to his actions, he can achieve either Yetzira, Buriya, or Atzilus, the higher worlds. This is the secret of the verse, he who creates the Ruach of man within him. And the Midrash says the nefesh of a person grows while it is within him. A person needs to train, educate himself in order to literally raise his own spirit, train a child according to his way. One needs to learn the nature of his soul and what speaks to it. This means uplifting the soul in a manner that works for it. For some, this means increased self-discipline. For others, it means to ease up and increase patience. At times, both are necessary. At the same time, prayer is an imperative to help call the shot and know each time what will be productive and conducive to growth. It all depends on the idea of returning the hay, tshuv hay, restoring Malchus, the kingship, to God. The true King of Kings, self-awareness comes from Malchus. The ego separates the self from God. Repentance means realizing that it is not me, it is all God. This restores the soul to its source and divinity. However, there is a great difference between one who merits one level as opposed to another level, and this leads to another principle. The nefesh of a person includes 248 limbs and 365 tendons, and does the ruach and neshama. When a person sins, he causes blemish to the limbs of his nefesh and ruach, or neshama, the parts of the soul. This gives reason to always be careful what one does with his limbs and all actions. Whatever happens below, so causes the parallel to happen above. Moreover, the state of body by the revival of the dead is determined by what one does while here alive. If someone defected in a limb, it will be incomplete in the next world. For example, one who withheld his hand from giving charity might get up from the grave handless. A general precautionary remedy is always to be giving and loving. The extent of his sin will depend upon what he has thus far achieved. If he has only his nefesh, so that he will blemish the nefesh. If ruach, then ruach, and neshama, then neshama. So according to the greatness of a person's soul is the strength of a person's evil inclination. As the Talmud said, anyone who is greater than his friend, his inclination is accordingly greater. Therefore, it is not all surprising if at times great people seem to fall into terrible things. Rabbi Nachman states that the public is mistaken to certain issues. For one, they think that a tzaddik cannot make a mistake, and if some reason he does, he's not a tzaddik anymore. The truth is, the bigger they are, the higher they fall. The purpose of descent is for ascent. 7 times the tzaddik falls and gets up. Proverbs, well, it is not that he fell, he would have not gotten up. One who gets up after stumbling stands higher than he did before. The reason is because God made a counterpart for everything, and therefore, just as the abaya of the side of holiness, so too there is a side of klipa, impurity as well. This is the secret. The wicked one watches for the righteous because he wants to mimic the side of holiness like a monkey does a man. The as if equally aligning of the opposite side, opposite the holiness, preserves the necessary balance of free will. The Zohar provides the monkey parable in describing the whole working of the evil side, the other side. Realizing this, one is alerted not to follow the impersonation, rather to constantly look for the real thing. In simple terms, the heart is to always look for the honor of God in every thought, word, deed, and not for the honor of the ego. So I encourage people to look more into this, and this would be the deepest Kabbalistic concept of really everything, but we'll come to the pure meaning of Jewish music. So that's the end of my presentation. Unfortunately, I had those internet outages. It's been 2.5 hours. Some people in the chat, so I appreciate people tuning in. 10 people still here. The super chats earlier, appreciate those. So if anyone has a direct question for me, you could do it at Doooovid, and I'll do a quick few Passover chants from the Haggadah, because Passover is going to be tomorrow night. Here I got Rabbi Nachman's the Breslov Passover Haggadah that has in detail these Kabbalistic concepts and the going up and down of the spiritual levels throughout the burning of the chametz. Mr. Boston, $2, appreciate that. Ultra T. So there's a few famous chants in the Haggadah that are usually sung. There's the V'hi She'amdo, La'avoseinu V'lonu, that they stood against our forefathers and us. Shaloch Echad Bilvad Omdum Aleinu. Not only did they come to destroy our forefathers, but us also. In every generation, they stand to destroy us. V'Kadosh Baruch Hu Matzuleinu Miyadam. But Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, saves us. So this is one of the most famous verses, in the Haggadah, and you could look at it in terms of anti-Semitism, in terms of the Kabbalistic theology of this reincarnation, the same play being enacted every generation, or the same purpose of man in unification. The same forces at evil are at bay in every generation. So I'll do Told Sam Yitzchak Rebbe used to chant this. There's a whole bunch. There's a Lubavitch tune of one of the Rebbes. V'hi she'amdu lavoseinu. People could look that one up. There was the Karlin stolen one. V'hi she'amdu lavoseinu. Popular. There's a whole bunch of one. I'll do a popular one. For some reason, most of the Passover tunes are 3-part tunes, and as opposed to the classical 4-part structures of meditation. And I didn't have time to research or understand why most of the Passover tunes are 3-part. V'hi she'amdo lavoseini v'loni. V'hi she'amdo lavoseini v'loni. Shalosh echad omdim aleinu. Shalosh echad omdim aleinu l'chaloseinu. This actually, I apologize, I missung this, and it is a classical 4-part structure. So you have the opening, V'hi she'amdo lavoseinu v'lonu, and the second part, that every generation they stand up against us. I mean, that they stood up against our forefathers and us, not just in the previous generations, but every generation. Shalosh echad bilvad omdim aleini l'chaloseini. Eilash v'kol dor v'dor, Eilash v'kol dor v'dor, omdim aleinu l'chaloseinu. V'yakadosh Baruch Hu Matzileini Meyudam. So So yeah, thank God there. So this popular tune, the classical 4-part structure, A B C B structure, and the message of the Gutta, the key part of the belief that we were slaves in Egypt, and God freed us from Egypt, gave us the Torah, gave us the law, and this process of leaving Egypt isn't something just that happened in history. It metaphorically, esoterically, is something that is constantly happening, the spiritual process. There's another famous tune, the Dayenu, Enough, that goes through the praises of God, saying that we praise God for these, and had he only done so much, that we would still be obligated to praise him. And the famous tune that is almost universally sung outside of like Hasidic groups that have their own tune is actually a Chabad tune. So find that here. Okay, so so this is just a minuet with the A-B structure. And it says, had only God taken us out of Egypt and not done these other things, and it has a whole bunch of verses like, had God just done this one miracle but not done these further miracles, Dayenu, that would have been enough. Die, 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 Dayenu, die, Dayenu, 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 die. That's a very popular tune. Anyone who's been to Passover, Seder, even non-Jews might be familiar with that. This is a bubble tune. I really like this one. This one's only a 3-part tune. It's from right before the Kiddush, and the words are very similar, and it comes from the basic understanding of the Exodus. Sorry. Hoitzianu miavdus lecherus, and he took us out from slavery to freedom, miogon lesimcha, from mourning to happiness, mi'avel, miyogon, from sadness to simcha to happiness, mi'avel, from mourning to Yom Tov to happy days, umiafela lior gadol, from darkness to great light, umishibud ligula, from servitude to freedom, v'nomar lefunov shira chadusha, hallelujah, and therefore we will say a new song, hallelujah. So this concept is a lot of prayers and song of just like, we were in darkness, we were bound, and now we're free. And this has a nice catchy tune. I think it's just a 3-part structure. Hoitzianu miaptus lecherus, miyagon lesimcha, miyevel liyom tov. Hoitzianu miaptus lecherus, miyagon lesimcha, miyevel liyom tov. Umiafela lior gadol, imishiva legila, v'nomar lefanav shir chadusha, hallelujah. So that actually, in the Haggadah, there's a statement that says the rabbis in Bnei Brak were, it says the more you discuss the Exodus, the more praiseworthy. And the rabbis in the Talmudic times were so caught up in the Seder that they were discussing the Exodus till it reached sunrise. So in Bubov, on the second night, in a lot of Hasidic places, the whole congregation will gather and sing and talk Torah till literally the sun rises. And in some places they even pray the morning with the sunrise. And so in Bubov, this is one of the 2 songs that they sing right before sunrise. So like as it's approaching sunrise, the Rebbe will say Hagia Kriya Shema, and everyone will say Kriya Shema together. It's reached the time to say the Shema, which is the early time in the morning, and they will sing this song of that we were taken out from slavery to freedom, from sadness to happiness, from mourning to celebration, from darkness to great light, from servitude to freedom, and therefore we will say a new song of praise. Hallelujah. Hoitzianu mi'avdos lecheres, mi'yagam lesimcha, mi'evel liyom tov. Hoitzianu mi'avdos lecheres, mi'yagam lesimcha, mi'evel liyom tov. Imi afela lior gudol, imi shurba legila, v'namar lefunav shir kadusha, hallelujah. So that one, probably, if any, only people who are in Bava probably know that song. It's not well known among Hasidim, and it's really only recited in Bava once a year, but a great tune, and the words coming from the Haggadah. So let me do more classic. Probably any any Jew who celebrated Passover will know these words. There's the Lashon Haba at the end. We say next year in Jerusalem. The classic Lashon Haba. B'Yerushalayim, Shana Haba, B'Yerushalayim. There's a few different tunes. Lashana Haba, Lashana, and actually, there's probably hundreds of tunes. But before that is after the Seder is the lines Kasal Seder Pesach Kil Chasam. We have concluded the Passover Seder according to the law. Kekal Mishpato v'Kekoso, and all the regulations. Kasher Zakini Lasader Oisod, as we were remembered to do. Kain Nizka Lasosa, we merited to do. Zak Shochain Meoino, Koinum Kahal, Edas Mimana, Vakorov Nahal Nite Kana Pedium Litzium Barina. So at the end of the Seder, say we did it. Like we were told, everything according to the order, and the whole congregation who took part of it, and therefore we should be redeemed and rewarded timely. And so there's the classical European, I don't think this tune's Hasidic, it's very popular from Orthodox to even Reformed Jews probably know this tune. Kasal Siddur Pesach Hilchasam, Kikal Mishpato V'chukaso, Kasher Zuchini L'Sader Oisam, Kein Nizke Lasoso, Zak Shoikein Me'oina, Koimen Kahala Das Mimana, Bekorov Nahel Nitekana, Padim Litziam Berina. Maybe even High T knows that tune. I don't know if anyone listening knows that tune. Like even if High T had ever been to a Passover Seder, probably would know Chasal Sir Pesach Chasam Kikal Mishpato V'chukaso Kasher Zakini L'Sader Oiso Kein Nizke Lasoso. And that's more almost like nusuk than a tune. And the Sklener Rebbe used to chant this famous Hasidic tune. This is a well-known Hasidic tune that goes, I don't know what early Hasidic Rebbe, maybe it was the Berditcher Rebbe, I'm not sure, but it's basically sung among all Hasidim. And in Sklen, the Sklener Rebbe, who a blessed memory, who I served and studied under for years, they used this tune for Kasal Seder Pesach. In Bobov, they used to sing this song on Passover to just the tune. Usually it's sung just the tune. I think even told Zarm Yitzchak, a very well-known Hasidic tune. Ay nine and ayam, ay 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 ayam, ay 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 did ayam. Ay nine and ayam, ay 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 ayam, ay 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 did ayam. I nine 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 nine. I nine 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 my ya. I nine 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 nine. Ay ya ya maya maya nine. Which also is kind of just like a theme and variation that like a play on the variation, like theme and variation. The song probably goes back, so to say, the time of Mozart. So you think of like the classic Mozart tunes that it's just a nice, pleasant tune. As I said, it's extremely well known among Hasidim. And Chabad, they may not know this tune, but of Hasidim, it's a very popular tune. Ay nine and ayam, ay 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 ayam, ay 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 did ayam, ay nine and ayam, ay 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 ayam, ay 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 did ayam, I nine 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 yum. Ay ya 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 mama ya ya yum. Ay nine 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 ya yum. Ay ya 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 maya mama. So at the very end, there's a few special songs just for Passover. And so these aren't Hasidic tunes. These are well-known tunes. Like there are Hasidic tunes for these tunes that some of them are pretty good. But in Carlin Stolen, there's this one like Adir Bim Luka, the Kilo Noah. But the most famous one is probably Shlomo Carlebach, Adir Hu Yivnei Beisa Bekorov, Bimheira B'Yameinu Bekorov, El B'nei Beitka Bekorov, and thinking of the temple, because on Passover we were supposed to go pilgrimage to the temple. That Judaism has been changed from the temple cult to modern day rabbinic Judaism. And so this is a song at the end of Passover as a plea to rebuild the temple. And just the first word changes. Adirhu, Bacherhu, Haderhu, Tarertu, Kadoshu. Like pleasant is your house that should be rebuilt quickly. Bimheira, expediently, B'Yameinu, Bekorov, quickly in our days. Kel B'nai, the master of the house, B'nai Beitka Bekorov, build your house quickly. So this song is basically pure rebuild the temple. And, it's at the end of the Agada and, like the politics, God forbid Ramadan right now and the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the violence in Israel, but Passover next year in Jerusalem. And then we sing this plea to rebuild the temple because it's a key of our religion. And this is like a classic, probably Germanic tune. Adirhu Yivnei Beso Bikorov Bimheira B'Meinu Bikorov El B'nei Bikor Beitka Bekorov. I even messed that up, but that's a common tune. I think even at the downtown synagogue they sang it, of probably like mainstream Orthodoxy or maybe in Reform history. Shlomo Carlebach, probably one of his best tunes, is actually to this song, and it's kind of rocking. Like Shlomo Carlebach, probably one of his best tunes, as the beseechment to God to rebuild the temple. Adirhu, Yivnei Beso Bikorov, Bimheira, Bimheira, Biyameinu Bikorov. Bimheira, Bimheira, Biyameinu Bikorov. El B'nai, El B'nai, B'nai Beit Korov. El B'nai, El B'nai, B'nai Beit Korov. It's actually by Rav Moshe Wolfson, who knew Reb Shlomo Carlebach. He studied with the Lubavitch Rebbe, one of the few non-Chabad students of the Lubavitch Rebbe, together with Shlomo Carlebach. This was the only time of the whole year, the last day Passover, he would sing this and another Shlomo Carlebach tune. The only time the whole year he sang when everybody was drunk, the Shlomo Carlebach tunes, but from the best of the Shlomo Carlebach too. Bacherhu, Gadolhu, Dagelhu, Yivnei Beso, Beso Bekorov. Bimheira, Bimheira, Bikorov Biyameinu. Bimheira, Bimheira, Biyameinu Bikorov. El B'nai, El B'nai, B'nai Beit Korov. So I remember Moshe Wolfson, there were actually hundreds of people, and it was the last day, and people were actually quite drunk. And also on the Seder night, because they have 4 cups of wine, people are quite drunk. And they would have like the word slipping me, but like echo, having 2 separate people singing at different times. And it goes through the acrostic, but that's a famous tune, and that's probably from the best of Shlomo Carlebach's tunes. Like Doooovid is a big Plato fan, and like the scholarship shows, possibly from a secular level, that a lot of the Kabalistic concepts are actually Platonic. And so the last song here, Chad Gadya, which is an interesting tune. One sheep that my father brought for me, and then it has like a series of unfortunate events of like the snake that bites the sheep, and the dog that bites the snake, and like the water and the fire, and the angel of death in a reading a famous prayer. And this is an old classical tune, like even High Tea probably knows this tune. Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. Which is, this is Aramaic, and the sheep that my father brought, and refers to the Paschal lamb that we can't bring now because the temple hasn't been rebuilt. So there you got some nice Passover songs. Maybe let me sing one other quick song. Well, I got a crowd here. So since I got a minion here, 14 people, I'll do another quick chant. These are from the holiday additional prayers that are not unique to Passover, but all of the pilgrimage festivals. And it's inserted into the prayer services. And Atu B'Chartonu. And there's many different tunes. High Tea, you know that Chad Gadya? Like any Jew, you're not, like if you're really Jewish, you know Chad Gadya. Like if you had a Passover Seder, your grandfather saying Chad Gadya. So Atu B'Chartonu Mikol Ha'amim Ahavtu Asanu V'Rositza Banu V'Roman Tonu Mikol Lashonos V'Kidashonu B'Mitzvah Sekla V'Karav Tonu Malkeinu Lavud Sekla V'Shimka Godol V'Kodosh Shalenu Kuroso. You have chosen us from all the peoples. You loved us and found favor in us. You exalted us above all the tongues, and you sanctified us with your commandments. You drew us close, our King, to your service and proclaimed your great and holy name upon us. So there's the Bubov tune, there's the generic tunes. I'll do 2 last tunes and I'll close it off, and I should be live with Charles Moskowitz in a bit too. Atu b'chartuni mikol ha'amim, Avtu sonu virasitza boni, Veroi mamtuni mikol ashoinois, Vikidashtuni b'mitzvosechu, V'keravtuni malkeini, Lavoidusechu, V'shimku agudo ve'akudosh, Alaini kurusoi. Here's another tune. This is more generic, mainstream Orthodox tune. Well, it's probably also Hasidic in origin. Atu bechartanu mikol ha'amim Yavtu esanu verasitza banu Reimamton mikol ha'lishunais Atu bechartanu Mikol ha'amim Yaptu esanu verasitza banu Raimamton mikol ha'lishunais Vikidashtuni b'mitzvosechu V'kerabtuni malkeini lavoidusechu V'shimku agudo ve'akudosh Aleinu kuruso Shimku agudo ve'akudosh Aleinu kurusoi. So if you notice, both of those were the four-letter name structure A, B, C, B tunes that are meditation on God's name, the spiritual journey that has progressively higher singing, and then back to the level. And also these famous words, just because largely these words are fitting. Vakura fisurenu mi bain hagoyim unafitsasenu mekanes miarkase oretz. Draw our scattered ones near from among the nations, from between the goyim, and bring in our dispersion from the ends of the earth. Vakura fisureni mi bain hagoyim unafitsasenu mekanes miarkase oretz. Vakura fisureni mi bain hagoyim unafitsasenu mekanes miarkase oretz. There was a nice bub tune to that. Vakura fisureni mi bain hagoyim unafitsasenu mekanes miarkase oretz. V'koroi fisureni mi bain hagoyim unafitsasenu mekanes miarkase oretz. There's another good Sklen tune. I'm do a last chant of the Musaf one that is popular to chant also about the temple, and because a lot of these tunes have a reference to rebuilding the temple. B'nei Veitka Kivat Chila. So that in Bubba, the Melek Rakman Rake Muleni Toivu Meitiv Adorish Loni. Merciful King, have mercy on us. O good and benevolent God, let yourself be sought out to us. Redeem to us your yearning mercy for the sake of your fathers who did your will. Rebuild your house as it was in first, and establish your sanctuary on the prepared site. Show us its rebuilding and gladden us in its perfection. Restore the priests to their service and the Levites to their song and music, and restore Israel to their dwelling. So it's actually just the first stanza of the Sklen song I always liked quite a bit. B'nei Veitka, B'nei Veitka Kivat Chila, B'nei Veitka Kivat Chila, V'koyin megdashta al mechoino ve'yareini. So it was actually just the first part of that stanza I always really liked. B'nei, b'nei, b'nei veitko. B'nei veitko kivat kila. B'nei veitko kivat kila. V'koyin megdashta al mechoino. Okay, so happy Passover, everybody. Anyone tune in, it should be live with Charles Moskowitz in an hour and a half. So looking forward to that. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the super chats, and happy Passover tomorrow night. Enjoy the Seder. God should bless us all with good things. So thanks for tuning in. Appreciate that. Sorry for my power outages. God forbid I had the power outages, so the problem's later, but I'll later add the links and timestamps, and no weekend review Sunday night because of Passover. We'll be going till then, but I signed up. I kicked out $320, cheap Doooovid. Broke all of my principles. I kicked out $320 for the Science of Consciousness conference, and I bought a ticket for me and Jennifer, Church of Entropy. So all next week, I'll be enjoying my Passover Chol Hamoed by virtually attending the Science of Consciousness conference, which is in Arizona. It's actually co-sponsored by the University of Michigan this year, Science of Consciousness. And hopefully me and Jennifer will do a few post streams talking about that. So stay tuned for that. So blessings, Avron. Thanks for joining. Happy Passover, high tea. Mr. Boston, Sarah, everyone else, take care. I will stream, God willing, a post stream. I had to pay $320 to attend virtually. So it's like a Zoom session, and you have to pay. And so you could still get a ticket. So Bida, happy Passover tomorrow night. Blessings, happy Ramadan. Easter, whatever you celebrate. Blessings, God be with you. And so, yeah, I will be attending the conference, but that's not open to all. You have to pay, and it's rather expensive, $320 for a ticket. They also got they included Jennifer, and hopefully we will do a post stream and talk about the conference. But if you want to attend the conference, you got to pay. So happy Passover, everyone.